So this is the way, sorry, we'll wait for this. This is the way regulations are published, originally in print and now also online by the government printing office. They're in 3 columns of small font. This was to save space because, for instance, this regulation is 77 pages. Now, the regulation itself is about 3 pages, but there's a lot of description about the process by which it was adopted and advice about how to implement it, and that makes it 77 pages. This is not what's linked to your web page, to the cover sheet. What's linked to the cover sheet is a more digitally accessible version of this from the website, the federal website, where there's information about this rule. This is in 3 columns in small font. A screen reader can't read this. So they did a version like they did this blank page. Okay, let's see if I can get this back. Just a moment.
That's not the federal government I'm used to, a blank page.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to link it. I'm going to use the link from the cover sheet. Just a moment. Nope, it didn't link it to the cover sheet. All right. Yeah, here it is. Just a moment. Okay. Now we're in business. So the official version was 77 pages, and this version is 289 pages. But it can be read by a screen reader. So it's, and I'm gonna make a little change here. So that just illustrates a change made by a federal government agency in order to make things digitally accessible. That's really the point I had for this. Let's download this real quick. Yes. See if we can get it come up again. No, forget it. So on page 50 of this, which I will scroll to, is the actual rule. Is where the actual rule begins. I had this in the version that didn't come up. I had this all ready to go. Yeah, it's actually, and if in the PDF you can just click in the page number and it goes there, which it's not doing. Here we go. Here we go.
Yes, this is available, but if we prefer to use the double.
Oh, you need to turn your mic on. Sorry.
Sorry. So here's a question. Now that we have this for accessibility, you said it was 200 and some pages. Do we have both options so that if we chose, like if we were going to look at something, could we use the 2-column version, or do we have to? That one's gone and now this is it.
Well, for things that we're posting on our web pages, that we're using in our classrooms, and that we're really using in any context after April 24th of this year, it needs to be in an accessible form. There are some exceptions. They're very narrow, and I'll talk about those now, actually. Well, first, let me make this big enough so that anyone can actually see it. Once again, this is not the version I intended to show you. Let's get this moved out of here. Okay, it's getting a little better. Oh, that's it. All right, so the key exception that actually is applicable for our board web pages, because now we're going to talk about that, is this exception for archived web content. And essentially, it's any content that meets these 4 tests. It's either was created before April 24th, 2026, or it's a duplication of something created there. The rest of those details don't really matter. It's retained exclusively for reference, research, or record keeping. It's not altered or updated since it's been archived. And it's labeled as archived. It's organized in a folder called archive. This is actually really helpful for the board, because if you think about our web page, that's not what we're looking at. Here we go, Board of Trustees. There we go. This is actually a change we've made. You'll recall that there were some concerns raised about how our video records of board meetings were organized, how they were summarized, and there were our minutes and our documents from prior materials from prior web board meetings were all on different pages. Now we have a page called Board Archives. And on there you've got all the meeting information, including materials from past meetings. You've got all the videos, and you've got the minutes. And there's a reason this page says archive, because these documents will not actually have to be made web accessible because they meet the 4 tests. They're just here as a record for reference, research. They pre-exist the date the rule takes effect, and they're organized under titled archives. This will not be true for minutes or videos or things that happen after April 24th of this year. But at least this actually saves us quite a bit of work. By comparison, if you think about the university's webpage for our policies, there are 275 policies listed there. They aren't archived. And they're not archived because they're used on a day-to-day basis by people who need to know how things work. So those will all have to be converted into a form that will be web accessible. But at least for the board's materials, we've got this problem solved. I started with the good news because on the staff cover sheet for this item, we do have, it's a new link I added today, so I apologize that it wasn't up there earlier. But it's a link for advice that our team, who are experts that are leading the transition of the university, gave after viewing materials from our November board meeting. And it's quite a list of advice. It's 3 pages, and there's some general notes and talk about how changes we have to make to our board documents. There's a real focus on the agenda and also minutes, some of the financial reports. I'm not asking you to read this in detail. It's really just here as an example. And it's an example that's a point in time example. So if you notice, our agenda looks different now. And I suspect it's still not perfect, but it's better. And by the time we've got it in the next one, it should be really right. But it's all these kinds of details. So for instance, text boxes, forms, graphics all need alt text, or they need to be replaced with something that can be read by a screen reader. So we've updated some of our templates. You'll note that the staff cover sheet template has been updated because it needed to be fixed. So it no longer has the graphic of Eastern Oregon University Board of Trustees at the top, just because it was easier to put in text. We would have had to have done alt text for that. And in many ways, we're just simplifying things. And I think that's part of the message. I love maps. I love graphs. I love a good spreadsheet full of text. Because that's color coded and has all kinds of links, because you can share an enormous amount of information in a very small space. But that's not digitally accessible. So in many ways, what we're going to be doing, what you're going to see, particularly in documents and in presentations, is things that are simplified so that more people can view them and participate. And how am I doing? I think I'll wrap up and just take any kind of questions, folks. I'll just say one last thing. There's some things we're going to have to do about the video recordings of the board meetings. The rules for video recordings are really quite stringent. You have to have a transcript of the recording. it has to be corrected. So if you've used an AI one, you've got to go through and you've got to correct all the misspellings. Everybody's names have to be, all the speakers have to be identified with proper spellings, so that these things, once again, can be read by a screen reader. And that's a lot of work. So, and we're still discussing this, but an outcome of this may be that we're not saving recordings and we go back to written minutes. So with that, I'll stop. That just gives a sense of what we're doing. The deadline for implementing all this, and it's not just for EOU, but it's for governments across the country that are of any real size, is April 24th of this year. And this is a little sense of what's happening at the board level.
So, you know, as I've been introduced to this, I mean, I'm just, you know, stunned, frankly, by the amount of work that is required. This is just how this affects the board, but you can imagine how it affects instruction and everything else. I just want to congratulate everyone who's been working on so hard on this. It's really a Herculean effort that, you know, it's important work. I mean, accessibility is critically important, but it clearly, you know, you can only do so much, right? You can only do so much with the time in the day. So does anybody, this is just a brief introduction. You'll be seeing some changes. And if you see changes, anticipate that they may be related to this. Feel free to ask questions. Does anybody have any questions right now? Trustee Mendoza.
These might be good Justin Montgomery or Gibb type questions. And it's more, I'm not so worried, I guess, about the board, although I should be. It's really more about like how the organizations have to shift, or how professors have to shift, and how if there's tools, if there's something where I speak and it does it right then, and if we bought that type of material, or if I put the picture and then I say something pretty quickly, it says what I want it to say on that picture, how easy this can be implemented versus how hard, and how much workload does that increase. But my hope is that AI or something is there that makes your jobs, I'll just say, still like it doesn't increase your workload a significant amount. As you were talking, I was thinking too, like, if I did it, you know, what would I have to do as well in the places that I work? And how do you make it easy or palatable to implement? Those are I don't know if there's any answers to that, but
we could bring Melody Carla up to the podium, who is the chair of our Digital Accessibility Committee, because they're working really hard on these problems. And you'd be surprised just how complex it is. For example, PDFs have been one of our larger issues in terms of instruction, because they're just quite simply not digitally accessible. But I think, and Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off if you wanted to, but Melody and the team I've really been looking into solutions, and to be, you know, I think there are two people who use AI the most on campus. Justin Montgomery is one of them. And so he's very, very knowledgeable about its use and applications and where it is now to help support this.
That is absolutely true. So there are definitely some ways that AI can help. And in fact, I want to mention to all of you, if you are AI users, that our access to ChatGPT, if you ask it, and this is in some of our documentation that we're providing to people, if you give it a document, of course, not a private document if you're using AI, but if you give it a document, you can say, does this meet the WCAG 2.1 AA standard? You have to ask it the right way, but then it will give you a checklist. It will provide, it's not always 100%, almost nothing is, but we are encouraging people to use that as a tool, as one of the things in the toolbox to help. Another thing I mentioned in one of the committee meetings that we came to talk to for the board was that we have a canvas devoted to digital accessibility tools. And if the board wants access to that, or to the training that we created, which was just a 20-minute overview about the law change and kind of a broad understanding of what's changing. If you want access to any of that, and I think a couple people mentioned that they did, but then I didn't get any emails, so maybe we just need to send you an invite without asking. So you can do that. But that includes the short training, but then there's also this wonderful canvas that has a number of instructional things about everything from PDFs, videos, web pages, text, color, contrast, all those things. So if you need an understanding of that, or you have an issue and you're like, how do I do this? We're encouraging people to make that their first step. And if they can't figure out how to fix something or they're not sure, we're trying to provide some mechanisms for support there.
You made me feel that. Sounds like a workaround, but you made me think like if I created my PowerPoint, I created my presentation, and then I tell Chat GPT, hey, make sure that it hits the standards and fix it the way you need it, and
it'll do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Well, it won't change it for you, but it'll give you a list of what you need to fix. So I think some of the things like one of the biggest issues with PowerPoints or presentations is color contrast. And that's not something most of us think about. But, when you have light colored text on a photo background, for example, which I've seen recently in a couple of our presentations, or you have a lighter color on, and sometimes we're trying to stick to brand colors. So we're trying to use those colors, even though they might not be the most visually recognizable. I think what people find really frustrating about all of this is that it feels like it's so much work for, they feel like, oh, if somebody wouldn't be using this, if they have maybe this need, but everybody has different sorts of disabilities. So someone might not be fully visually impaired, might be able to see, but they need that contrast. So that's a different disability than perhaps someone who can't see at all. So the WCAG standard is covering such a wide number. There's just a huge amount of different disabilities that people may have. So that's why it feels so big. There's so many different things we have to do to make it accessible to all those different types of needs. So I know it's very challenging. I really appreciate the work that's being done on campus. Chris has done an incredible amount of work for the board and a great example to everyone.
Suzanne has done a good.
Oh, both of you. Yes, thank you. Sorry, both of you. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this analogy, and maybe you can tell me if you think it's apt or not. I certainly remember the days when in our workplaces, we would have to change our word processing software, or it would, and Microsoft Word would upgrade and it'd be like almost an entirely new piece of software. And we'd all be set back. We'd lose weeks of efficiency, really relearning how to do what we'd done 6 weeks before without trouble. But we all did it. And it seems to me, when I think about the skill sets I'm going to be learning in the next 6 weeks or so, it's sort of like that.
I think that's a good analogy, although word processing is just one piece. I feel like it's almost more akin to when we were not forced, I guess some of us more than others, to use computers in the workplace for the first time. Some people were very resistant to that for a good reason. It changed the whole workflow, right? It changed everything in your day-to-day life. And there was a time when there were computers available and a lot of people didn't want to use them because it changed their workflow. Now that we can't even imagine that, right? So I think it's going to be sort of like that. And we will get there, and it's just slow progress, but we'll do the best we can and bring everybody on board.
Thank you. And thank you for, for all the work that you're doing. This is incredibly difficult. It's an arduous task. And as a faculty member, I teach analytics, applied-based, online in an asynchronous environment, which means everything has to be video driven, giving them step by step. And when I came here 2 years ago, I started building an archive, a library, so that I could teach them different things. Linear programming, I could pull this video and give it to them. Now I got to go back and, touch all these again. And it's like thousands, right? That it's so much work. I'm just thinking, heck with that, just chunk it all, destroy it all, because that's just easier than going back and doing that to all these videos. You're right. And if that happens to me, and it's not words or PowerPoint, we're talking about videos with spreadsheets, and the videos come along with spreadsheets, right, that have color coding to instruct a student to do certain tasks with areas shaded in blue and different tasks with areas shaded in yellow, right? But if you remove those instructional tools, then I have to come up with different ways of teaching them how to do things. And then you start thinking, well, wow, I'm spending more time doing this than I am actually teaching the class, right? So, I mean, it's very frustrating for faculty. I know that you didn't do this. You're just dealing with it. And thank you so much for that. But just understand that a lot of faculty are just, I mean, April's around the corner. You're thinking, you know what, I'm just going to chunk it and just forget it. I'll have a rudimentary course instead of this robust because it's just too much, right? So.
That is absolutely a fair and valid response to this. And we are not the only university. Obviously, everybody, all the public institutions are dealing with this. It's a common concern. And in the same way that we're perhaps not going to be recording the board meetings, it's the same thing. You have to make a choice about the workload. And, the nice thing, if there is a nice thing about the faculty presentations and videos, is that if you're the only speaker, it can be easier to correct transcripts because you don't have to say who's speaking if it's just you. So there are some, and AI, again, will help with creating transcripts if you didn't already have those captions and transcripts, but you do have to clean them up. So it is a large amount of work. It's just huge lift, and I appreciate that. We've been trying to support faculty the best we can, and it's doing what we can.
Oh, you're doing fantastic. Thank
and it's
goodness.
a group effort too. I just want to be very clear. We have a wonderful committee that it has faculty members on it as well,
Right.
and we have faculty, staff, and librarians, and everyone is working together to try and meet the need of all the different users because we all use technology and digital content in different ways.
And I'm so grateful for your assistance and your team and Charlotte. You guys are wonderful. It's just, I just wanted you to hear the frustration from faculty going, in case you haven't heard it already.
No, I definitely heard it. So,
okay.
Thanks so much. Are there any questions on mine, Suzanne? Any other,
Yeah.
Madam President?
I just wanted to say that Dean Carla came to the university in July last year, and almost immediately after arrival is when I appointed her to lead this committee. And so I just really respect the work of the committee, to your part, Trustee Geegan, because it has been a huge lift. And, the previous dean also let campus know about these standards the year before, brought it to faculty senate, deans brought it to colleges. But now that the deadline is here, it does feel sort of like a revolution in the workplace, to Dean Carla's point, right? It is this very difficult undertaking. And Provost Geisinger is particularly passionate about it for all the reasons that we know. And I appreciate his guidance and pushing around this, and appreciate the board's interest in this topic as well, because it is a really important one. And it's about all of society's ability to access things the way that many of us already can quite easily. So thank you again for the work and for the interest. It is a lot. We're all struggling with it.
So now you have a pretty good understanding of why I was stunned when Melody presented this the other day. Thank you for all your work, and thank the faculty for all their work. On we go.
thank you for the support from the board.
Initially, we had the HEC capital request on the consent agenda, but we had a little bit of extra time, and you've heard me talk in the past about how important I believe, and I think we all believe, maintenance and improvement of our facilities is. So that, along with the fact that I never want to miss an opportunity to have John come before us and speak, I invited him to update you on the 27 and 29 request, and looks like he'll be joined by Leanne. So thank you for being here. And it's just important, I think, for all of us to really understand what we're going to be asking for.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman and trustees, for this opportunity to speak yet again. Every 2 years, UU has the opportunity to request state funding for capital construction projects through HEC's capital budget process. Inlow Hall here is an example of that project. A project that came through the pipeline. This agenda item is about permission to submit. We're asking to submit up to 4 projects to the HEC process. We intentionally are asking for flexibility. Scoping, sequencing, and whether all 4 ultimately advance will evolve as we get closer to the April submission deadline and as the political landscape becomes clearer. Approval today keeps our options open. It does not lock us into outcomes. The focus is on renewal, deferred maintenance, and student-serving infrastructure. Everything you'll see aligns with how HEC is currently scoring projects. So the agenda is I'll be reminding us of HEC's timeline and how HEC evaluates projects, showing how EOU has scored in prior biennia, and laying out 4 projects that we're proposing for the Board of Trustees approval. HEC is a formula-driven and competitive process. We do not control the outcomes. Submitting more or fewer projects does not improve odds. And the April deadline is what's driving today's timing, not internal urgency. Today's action keeps us eligible and competitive. This is the HEC scoring rubric. This is the lens that everything is evaluated through. Renewal over new construction matters. Deferred maintenance reduction matters. Student success, workforce relevance, life safety, and community benefit all carry weight. These projects were selected because they hit multiple rubric lanes, not just one. These next 2 slides are the 2 priority biennia HEC prioritization lists for just for context. LOSO was previously submitted and scored 3 projects under the funding line in the 2023 legislative session, and just under the funding line in the 2025 legislative session. This tells us the project is competitive within HEC's framework, but the outcomes are highly dependent on the statewide priorities in any given biennium. We are proposing 3 11G and Q bond requests and 1 11F bond request. 11F bonds are self-funded, but HEC requires them to go through the same submission process. Advancing all 4 now gives us flexibility later. These next 3 slides cover the Loso Hall Student Access and Resiliency Project. This project remains our #1 request and will be the 4th time it will be submitted. It has the largest student impact, strong regional community story tied to arts, academics, and student support services. It represents 11% of our E&G space and 25% of our deferred maintenance backlog. Modernizing this building materially changes the condition of campus as a whole. This slide shows the scoring results from the Loso Hall's 3 prior submissions. The point is not the exact numbers. The point is we've documented a track record in HEC's system, and we've been close enough to justify continuing. Each submission cycle has been an opportunity to tighten the scope and strengthen our narrative to match HEC's weighting. These next 2 slides cover the Badgley Hall building system. This project is about infrastructure stability, not program change. Badgley Hall infrastructure supports labs, research, and key external partners. Failure here impacts academic and partner operations. Badgley Hall is 18% of our E&G space and 12% of our deferred maintenance backlog. These next 2 slides cover the Ackerman Hall renovation project. Due to being a 90-year-old building, Ackerman Hall has an outside deferred maintenance for its size. This project will complete a transition that started in the 1990s when it ceased being an elementary school. It's about preserving a historic asset while making it function for modern instruction. It has a strong alignment with HEC's preference to repurpose existing spaces. Ackerman Hall has 5% of the E&G space, but 30% of our deferred maintenance backlog. HEC requires a 3% match for each project. Match requirements are known and phased over multiple fiscal years. There will be no surprises here. Approval today does not commit us to suspending these funds nor starting construction. This slide covers the Doherty Hall building envelope and the Res Hall roof renewals. This is an 11F bond request that is self-funded. The debt service is paid through Res Life, not state or tuition funds. Even though it's self-funded, HEC requires the project to go through the same capital submission process. The scope is remaining targeted renewal to stop air and water intrusion into North, Doherty, and Ellicott Halls. The intent is asset protection and avoiding accelerated deterioration, not housing expansion. Any questions?
Trustee Real, this just so everybody knows, this was presented to the F&A committee and received support for approval. Cedric, I don't know whether you have anything else to add or not.
No, I think the point's clear. We just need to keep the ball rolling. That's what the committee came to. So, we know that we're not going to get everything through, but we need to keep everything moving and try to get our important projects. So we appreciate the work and the presentation. Yes, saw the same information we did, and our committee felt moving it forward unanimously was the decision. So,
thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Smith.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, like, at what point, how many times do you have to put it in to get it or whatever, right?
Every time.
Yeah, every time. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't understand, like if you ranked high, you've got all the rankings.
It's a competitive process. It is a competitive process. Mm-hmm. And so we do have periods of feast and famine in the capital submission process. So I don't have an answer to that. Otherwise, we just try every time.
Do we know what is in the pot at HEC?
In terms of the overall funding? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's generally been around $250 to $300 million of bond capacity every biennium. Okay. So we kind of know once the rankings come out where they're trying to settle. So then what happens is the legislative session, they determine where that funding line is.
Okay.
I've always advocated for, and historically they've gone 250 to 300 million. It would be nice to get a little bit more million of bond capacity, so get more projects across the state.
And this project, 45, I guess, ish million, is that
50 to 55?
Yeah. Is that kind of a reasonable request from the competitors?
Yes.
Okay.
And let me see if I think I have this from.
So 4 to 5 projects could be funded.
So here's the last biennium. So University of Oregon, $71 million project. Southern, $43 million project. The data center for Western Oregon was at almost 14 million. And costs. OSU heat plant repurpose $100 million. So we're within the ranges. We're not an outlier.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Trustee Mendoza?
Nice presentation. I was just actually thinking what I saw on the slide deck was Loso Hall Phase 2. The score was 83.
Yes.
And then I didn't see, but for 5, the next slide, Loso Hall Student Access Resiliency is 5th. I was trying to
same project, different name.
Yeah.
We did the McKenzie Theater renewal was Phase 1.
And it's done.
And it's done. Yes.
So
that was a $5 million project. And it left a lot of the other building, infrastructure and building systems and reprogramming was to be a second phase. So it's in my world, it's a phase. However, this is a better way to present it to the as student access and resiliency.
I love it, and I just wanted to understand that better. And then
sure,
I didn't see. And I'm sorry to bring it up this way. I didn't see baseball. And I didn't know if it was still on the table and if we were trying to figure that out in different ways or
it's not, it doesn't go through this process. Baseball, and it presented, I think in the F&A. So we're getting pricing on that. We'll have the pricing completed by the end of March for April for internal decisions. And then it'll be ready for some internal decisions. And if we decide to fund up to 2 million or more, then it'll come to the F&A committee in May, and then here in the board in your May meeting for review and approvals.
And if you could maybe explain some of the infrastructure issues we have out in the baseball complex, because it does appear, even if we're not building the field right away, there's a possible multi-phase process. John,
we're bidding 3 different packages. Package A is a overall infrastructure and surface restoration and some mass grading. And that provides and upgrades all of the utilities for support of a baseball field and a softball field. Package B is the baseball field itself, and package C is softball field. So we'll have some pretty in-depth pricing of all options. And so if the funding is, this is the $2 million limit. If it goes over 2 million, we'll come to the F&A committee and then the board of trustees.
Trustee Mendoza, the fields were discussed during F&A, so there's information in Cedric's report as well as in the F&A. But yeah, so
one more important: this ball field is not bonding, and there's no bonding related to that. No bond funding.
Okay, I believe there's a question from Trustee Valerio.
Yes, thank you. A comment. Thank you, Director Garley. It's very informative. 2 quick questions. I love the EOU space, the percentage of the space, and the deferred maintenance. Does HEC award, or is that part of the rubric that some of these projects are completed in one phase, or some of them have 1, 2, 3, or 4 phase? Is that part of a decision making of the rubric?
No, it's not. And part of it is because currently our phases have been before the OUS breakup. The funding was provided before the OUS breakup. For example, in La Hall, phase 1 was several years before the breakup. There is a document trail that said that they would the OUS would fund it in phases. So we've had to bring that forward as we're still kind of cleaning up the runway. We've talked about the OUS back in 2015.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Mauricio, did you have another question as well?
No, the other question was answered already when somebody else asked it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Cronin.
Thank you, Chair. My question, first of all, just John, thank you. We've had the opportunity to listen to your presentations, and you always do such a great job of helping us understand the process. So I just want to thank you for that. This is a really basic question. How does the university, how do we prioritize our requests in terms of LOSO? I kind of get LOSO, but because that's a repeated request. But the other 2, how did we prioritize one over the other in those 2? How does that work?
Those were part of a discussion with the campus master plan amendments that have gone forward, and it's been about 2 or 3 years since we've done a master plan amendment, and that process starts with the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee, and then advances to executive leadership to finalize and change the prioritization. And that's how we get to prioritization through. And it always goes to the president for final clarification or reprioritization.
Thank you.
I think we could also share that, as these priorities are developed, stuff happens, right? In some of our buildings, we've had some increasing issues, particularly in Badgley, over the past couple of years that are really interfering with instruction and interfering with the daily lives of our employees in ways that is pretty concerning, just like the LOSO situation, unfortunately.
That's what I was kind of wondering, if there was, we were at sometimes responding to more urgent needs than other times. Yeah.
Anyone else? Seeing none, this is an action agenda, so the board does need to approve the request. So I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
By Cedric Rail
I'll second.
and second by Trustee Geegan. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, Chris, please poll board.
That's right. We're doing that. All right. Trustees, please answer yes or no when I call your name, proceeding alphabetically. Christine Cronin,
Yes.
Scott Davidson,
Yes.
Connor Fecht is not here today. Margot Geegan
Yes.
and Gary George. Yeah, not here. Chuck Hoffman,
Yes.
Aaron Lair,
Yes.
Tamara Mabbott,
Yes.
George Mendoza,
Yes.
Cedric Reel,
Yes.
Brenda Smith,
Yes.
Anna Stanley,
Yes.
Carrie Thompson,
Yes.
and Maurizio Valerio.
Yes.
All right, that is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's, 12 yes, no, 0 for no, and that the motion passes.
Thank you all. And John, thanks. Look forward to seeing you at the next board meeting.
Anytime.
Thank you. I've said many times that if you would have told me that anyone could come up with a funding system more complex than healthcare financing, it would be impossible. But I was wrong, because the way the state determines funding is even more complex. I know no one who understands it better than our Vice President of Finance and Administration. So again, I think I know we've talked about this before, but I felt a refresher was important, just so Leanne could also spend some more time for us. Having a meeting without Leanne is an impossibility. So anyway, I've asked her to just give us a brief review of the SCCM. So the floor is yours, Vice President Case.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity. Chair Hoffman has been wrong. It is a fairly complex model. We've been using it about 10 years now. It's gone through one revision since 2015. I look at it all the time, and I'm happy to talk about it all the time, as everyone at Eastern knows. But I learned something new, some little nuance of it every time I look at it as well. So it is complex. This presentation is specifically about the student success and completion model. I think it's important for you to understand, or just a brief reminder of how we get to this point for what the dollars are that flow through the SSCM. In the beginning, prior to the biennium, all of the Oregon public universities come together and prepare a unified budget that looks at current service level. That rolls up to HEC. HEC then presents to the legislature, the ARB, the agency request budget. Goes through the legislature. When the legislature comes out with funding, they come out with funding in a pool called the Public University Support Fund. And within that is the SSCM. Within the Public University Support Fund is also the statewide funds. So the things like the Oregon State University extension programs are located in there, and other statewide programs primarily for OSU. That finite pot of money that comes out then rolls into this SSCM dollars. So sometimes I explain that a little bit more to you, because at this time of year, or next year really, when we start with the new biennium, it gets kind of confusing between what's in the POSF overall and then what we see in the SSCM, because obviously the POSF is quite a bit bigger. Anyway, my background there. So again, approved in 2015, the model looks at success. So it's only based on Oregon residents. It looks at completion, so graduates from Oregon, as well as student credit hours on an annual basis. There's also incentives to improve graduation for targeted programs built into it. Underrepresented students and degrees achieved in high demand fields. Again, it's a finite pot of money that comes in. The funding is only for Oregon residents, goes through all of the things they just talked about, as well as what we call the mission support, which includes regional access, research support, and public service. You'll see when I get to the numbers that this mission support is really critical to EOU. We have such a small enrollment base for Oregon residents that this pool of money that allows us to support our mission is critical. It's much larger, a much larger portion than our degree completions and our SDH. So that's one of the things that we will continue to fight for, to make sure that we are in that mix, that we don't lose out in those dollars. The resident definition is fairly important as well. It goes through this definition, and our registrar's office is really the ones that control this. All the universities have to abide by the ORS, obviously. The reason it's important is you can't change your residency. I'll just give you a short story. When I came in 2015, my daughter had already came. We lived in Washington. She had already came. She was going to be a freshman. She had been admitted to EOU. She was considered a non-resident. I came here. We were all residents. We never could change her residency from that and stuff. So she was never considered in the SSCM calculations, even though we all lived here. So it's just one of those strange things that happen. I think Peter Geisinger is the same way and stuff. We just, it is what you are when you get here. So the residency component and how we classify residents within the registrar's office is critical. Getting to the numbers, these are post true-up numbers. So these are current as of today, keeping in mind that FY27 is an estimate going forward. The large pot of money for the SSCM is that $1,068 million. That is split between the biennium for 49% in the first year of the biennium, or the first year of the biennium, and 51% in the second year of the biennium. The mission support funding comes off the top. So that's the first thing that comes off. It's about 16.6%. So they pull that off, and then the remaining portion of the money is split 60% for completion or outcomes-based funding and 40% for the student credit hour funding. We're looking at those same numbers on the left-hand side of the system-wide for all the universities, and then breaking it down into what EOU looks like. So for EOU for 26, our total funding from the SSCM is $25.4 million, and for 27 is estimated at $26.4 million. And you can see mission support, that $13 million is almost not quite double what we get for the outcomes based or the completion dollars, and then the student credit hours is a little bit less than that. Looking specifically, this one just adds in the percentages, so you can see that our funding for the mission support is 15.8% versus the 2.89 for outcomes based and 2.61 for the activity based or the student credit hours. Total out of what we get in a year out of the total pot is 4.85%. And we have held right in there. This number has actually gone up, not by a percentage, but, from like 4.4 up to 4.85. So we are gaining ground in the total that we're receiving, but not great dollars. The student, the mission support piece of it is that 16.6%. Within the mission support, there's base payments, and it's driven by FTE. Everything in this model is a calculation, and then there's a size factor weighting as well. So they look at a 3-year trailing average for FTE for based on fall, and they apply that, and then they also apply the size factor weighting. For reference on the size factor, we are weighted at 1.2, or SU Cascades is 1.27. They have a higher rating than us, and Southern is the next closest to us at 1.1. So our 3-year average FTE for Oregon residents that applies to this portion of it is 1,324, compared with OSU Cascades at 805 and Southern at 2238. Built into the mission support funding are these other things: the base funding of 7.4 million, regional support at 3.5, the public service numbers, public service amounts, and the research support. Yes, that is $1,700. And then there's a settle up piece of it that comes into play to ensure that we get pulled up to that 16%. Activity base, 40%, again, only on Oregon residents. When institutional research submits their information to HEC, it goes through HEC's institutional research area. They pull out all of the data and drop it into the big model. So we look at that piece of it. Everything on the activity base and the completion is based on zip code. So it ties back to the student level and also the zip code of the classification of the class. Same thing with the degree programs. Just looks at by major zip code and then by the level of the degree. Breaks down a little bit more, again, just so you can see where our dollars come from. For freshman and sophomore, for student credit hours, $1.4 million is what we get, based on a 3-year average of freshmen and sophomores, 24,000 credit hours. It's a calculation, $57 per credit hour for freshmen and sophomores. Graduate students, $68 per credit hour. Again, just Oregon residents. Outcomes based works very similar. Everything is Oregon resident based except for PhDs. PhDs, it doesn't matter where you're from. Non-residents also count in that mix as well. There's some bonuses when you talk about outcomes based or the completions, graduates. So there's bilingual increases, there's health increases, and STEM also has a weighted average weighting that drops in there as well. Transfers, they break it down into further categories. A non-transfer, you get 100% of that. For a transfer student, there's a discounted rate. But if you're from an Oregon community college, you get a plus up, so you get a bonus. So again, the complexity that we built into this is a little crazy at certain times. But you can see here the different areas of study. Those are the increases, the bonuses that we get from those areas I talked about, and then the targeted populations. We also get bonuses for those areas as well. This lays out the different areas, the additive, the 37.5 for the community college bonus, the transfers that are discounted here. The red, there's also a work group working on looking at the SSCM this spring. These are 2 areas that work group will look at, whether or not to continue the discount of the transfers, and then whether the area of study bonus needs to be revisited to either change the areas of study bonus down or add more to it. Targeted populations. These are the things that we get that $1.5 million for, where we have a student comes into us and is in any of these categories, or 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these, or 2, goes into the formula. So a student can be underrepresented minority and low income. And so we would get 2 bonus points for that student. And so it flows through there just depending on how the student's makeup is when they're at EOU. Seems like I have so much more to talk about with the SSCM. Question?
Vice President Case, could you just summarize for us in very general terms, maybe over the past 3 years, what the allocations, how the allocations have changed, if they have? I understand there's all these different categories, but overall, have allocations increased, decreased, stayed the same in the recent past?
The total pot of money has certainly gone up, but our allocation, that 4.85, has stayed right in the 4.6, 4.7, 4.8 range. If that's what you're asking. It's very hard to manipulate the model, and it's hard to swing the model the way that it's set up. I don't like this, but this is how they coin it. There's winners and losers every time we make a change. There's only one pot of money. So if we get more money, someone else is going to lose money.
Right. It's a zero-sum game.
And if I may, we were a winner this year. We saw increases in particularly the outcome, whereas others did not. So, and we were just one of 3 institutions that increased funding. So there's actually good news for EOU. I know we often talk about this formula as, a killer, but, we are now in the game.
Through a lot of hard work by yourself and staff. So, I mean, that improvement has not been an accident. So yeah, it's a zero-sum game. She's mentioned the work group. And I mean, within the work group, if one institution wins, as long as the pot's the same, another institution loses. That's just the nature. So other questions for Vice President Case?
Leanne, what do we have to do at EOU to get a bigger piece of this pot? Is it simply getting more Oregon resident students to complete at EOU? I mean, is it that simple?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Oregon residents are the driver of it, so they make a difference. But there is a balance. We don't want every student to come here from Oregon. It's part of the 40-40-20 goals for Oregon. So that's really why it's built in there. Some of you may remember, some of you may not. The previous model we had, the resource allocation model, it looked at everyone, so it didn't just drill down into Oregon residents.
One of the things that I like to talk about when we talk about the outcomes-based funding, and it is important to EOU, is that it's just so important to do well on each of the metrics in the formula anyway, right? If EOU is to advance, the key areas for us to advance in are, of course, making sure that we continue to diversify the students who come here, be that first-generation students, veterans, and others, because that's our mission, and that's who we are, and making sure that when they come, they're successful. Yes, again, performance funding, amen. But we also must, as an institution, continuously improve in these metrics because they're so intricately related to our reputation. Increasingly, institutions are looked at for how successful are you actually with the human beings we bring to you. It is absolutely 100% our job to make sure we're supporting every student who enters into EOU. And so having this wraparound support, making sure that they move from first to second year to third year, these are the things I'm most passionate about at EOU. So it's not just, this funding, it's about this larger piece. And I think too that we have to always keep in mind that the state is an important part of our funding, but our own admission of students from across the Pacific Northwest, for the most part, is also critical. And as we build that reputation for success, we're going to be increasingly more attractive and we will have more dollars coming through the door just through the tuition. So I think, always having that multi-pronged strategy that looks at EOU and the student experience holistically is so important for us, even as we work to strategize around the formula.
Thank you. Other questions? Are there any online? I'm sorry to put you through this, especially members of F&A who had to go through it before. But understanding this as best we can is important. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you spending the time. Okay, we are right on schedule. We will take a 10-minute break and reconvene promptly at 10:20.
Yeah.
Do you need help with your slides or anything? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, yeah, Gib will help you.
So while he gets set up, I'd like to introduce you to Professor James Dyer, who teaches English and writing. And today he's going to tell us about some research that he's been doing on developing structured syllabi to help students understand what a course is all about and to help them determine whether it's something they want to be involved in or not. So welcome, Professor. Thanks for coming. And we look forward to hearing about your work.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so my name's James. I teach primarily first year writing courses. My background is in developmental education and student support. So when I talk about supporting students in the classroom, this is very much like my whole jam. Um, so I syllabi are kind of a weird thing to study. I studied this very briefly with the research team, and I'm going to present a little bit of that research and then kind of how I took that research into classroom applications in both my first year writing classes and the first year seminar curriculum that folks have developed here at EOU. So yeah, so I think first year college writing instructors are kind of in a weird spot where, we all come into this from an equity and access perspective. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword because I want to make my classes as accessible as possible for students, and I need to prepare students for the expectations they're going to meet in other classes. So if I come in like kind of soft and squishy, how am I preparing students for those maybe harsh or stricter expectations in other classes? I think syllabi are a really interesting place where it's kind of like a battleground where these things kind of clash. So I think if you've gone to college, you've seen a syllabus. They are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Interestingly enough, though, they are relatively unexamined in research. They're usually used as kind of like if someone's doing a classroom audit, they'll like take syllabi as like a piece of the research, but they never really look at it like explicitly. So they're relatively unexamined, often glossed over on the very first day of class. And as I'll talk about in a second, my syllabi often go straight from my students' hands into the waste bin as they're going out the door. It's not what I want, but it's kind of just the reality of the situation. So when we think about syllabi, I think it's less important to think like how are we going to develop the, uber super accessible, most kind and equitable syllabi, and more important to teach students how to read the thing that's actually in front of them. So that's kind of my general approach with this. So what the heck is the syllabus really? It is, in terms of what my students notice, this is this document where you'll see late work policies. This is what they notice first. Absence policies, definitely probably the most relevant for most of them in my 9 a.m. class. You'll see required text grading policies. And I think as instructors, when we reference the syllabus, it's probably most commonly to ignore a student's question and just say, it's in the syllabus, go read it. I think we as instructors often forget that syllabi are often students' first real experiences with this kind of a document. I've had students tell me, the syllabi are, between 2 and I've seen a 7 or 8 page syllabi. It's just too much. It's too much to understand in one small document. And a lot of students don't really know how they're expected to use their syllabus. And I think as instructors too, we don't really understand what the purpose of this thing is other than it's required. We have to give it to our colleges as we, start the term. So syllabi are an inherently weird document. If you look at a syllabus, it's, we're typically as scholars used to writing our own stuff. Syllabi, they can be written by an instructor. Certainly institutions have some institutional language in there. They can be written by, curriculum committees. And in one document, you are getting maybe 4, 5, 6 different voices essentially describing the same thing. So syllabi are really weird to analyze for that reason. So I think, again, when we think of what is a role of a college syllabus, I think typically one of these 5 things typically comes out. We may look at a syllabus as an advertisement or a preview for a course in a course catalog. I don't know if Oregon's this way, but in Texas, where I taught previously, all syllabi need to be publicly accessible. So students often use them as like, this is the advertisement for the course to see if I want to take this class or not. A syllabus is also a map for learning outcomes that are often not written by professors, right? They come from the state curriculum committees, departments, sometimes colleges. Syllabi are a reference guide for all those little materials and policies that are important in a class. They can be a course calendar, although some professors don't include that in the syllabus. And this is, I think, on my very first day at UU, how a syllabus was described to me as a, quote, legally binding contract with my students. Yeah, Margo, you remember that when we talked about that? Yeah. Kind of freaked me out a little bit. Yeah, so I pay really close attention to what goes in my syllabus to make sure I'm not promising things that I can't deliver on. But these are all kind of contrasting roles of a thing. Right? These goals are kind of often at odds. Like, why are you advertising for something that is in the same document as what we're calling a legally binding contract? Why is a course calendar also fitting in, a reference guide with my absence policies and late policies? I think the best way to think of a syllabus is as a quote, and this comes from Joyce Bowers Campbell, a defining document in which you can find the tacit, so the unsaid expectations of a classroom. This is really the only way to think of a document that's been created by so many different hands for so many different purposes. So for my actual research, we wanted to see, well, okay, if this is what we're saying a syllabus is, what are those tacit expectations of a college classroom, and how are they encoded in a syllabus? So my previous research, I was working with a team. We looked at syllabi from 4 community colleges in Texas. And again, if you've had any experience with Texas, community colleges only come in one size, ginormous. So we had 28 different syllabi, which doesn't seem like a huge corpus until you understand these 28 different syllabi were probably used by hundreds of different instructors in different courses, used and reused and adapted and readapted over time. The syllabi we were looking at specifically were syllabi in what Texas calls exit level developmental English courses. So these are if you're in a community college, it's like you'll take a sequence of developmental courses to get college ready. And these were in that last course that you take before you get to move on and take credit bearing courses in Texas. A not quite perfect corollary would be like our Writing 115 class. It's that, although we offer it for credit, which is amazing, it's kind of that last, that class that's meant to get you ready for first year writing. So we looked at syllabi from these classes in particular, and in Texas, as everything in Texas, it's state mandated. So we were dealing with the same learning outcomes across all these different institutions. To do this, we used some kind of weird research methodology. We did thematic and content analysis to really look at the ideologies that were sort of represented in specifically syllabus statements. So statements regarding communication, statements regarding what are called, quote, standard Englishes. We are also looking at, and this is maybe slightly less relevant for you. We were looking at, community colleges that were hugely linguistically diverse. So we were really hyper focused on, okay, what if a student's coming into this class from like an ESL class? What kind of English are they expected to use? kind of English might sound kind of weird for folks who are linguists, but there are all different kinds of languages that we interact with on a daily basis. You know, like when I go home and swear at my cat, it's going to look very differently than giving a board presentation. Now, for my students in Texas, what this looked like was, you know, they're coming from their home environments where they were often, you know, code switching between different languages. They were coming from a high school environment where this was pre-COVID, but still we were dealing with a lot of really specific literacy challenges that we've been dealing with for the past decade or so. And a lot of different students who were first generation as well. So we're really trying to look at what these syllabus statements look like for those students who maybe don't have a lot of experience with fancy schmancy academic language. And again, I didn't expect to have a ton of time. We've written a lot about this, so there's obviously a ton. I'm happy to answer some questions about this research, but I wanted to highlight some, I think, kind of important findings from our study that we really took away for practical purposes. There was an interesting dynamic that we saw. So I just mentioned syllabi are developed by, you know, multiple hands going to developing these things. There's a really interesting dynamic between institutional language and instructor language for these expectations. Instructors, really enough, are oftentimes harsher in their expectations for students. And I can see sort of where this comes from as an instructor myself, right? Like I, you know, have gotten emails without subject headings that, you know, I don't know who it's from or what it's for. You know, I have, you know, been insulted by students in weird ways, and you know, in my classroom interactions. And I know why that has to look different from institutional language, which has to be cover more bases, I suppose. But that was kind of a surprising finding for us nonetheless, because a lot of these instructors who, you know, we've interviewed elsewise are, you know, would say they are equity first. They're equity minded first. So it was a little bit of a, you know, a whiplash to see this equity minded first statement come next to a ban of quote text speech or slang, which I think for folks teaching writing makes sense in papers, but makes less sense through our daily interactions with students, right? One of our research teams, or essentially members, were like, you know, it makes sense why we ban text speech in an email, right? Like, students need to learn how to write formal emails. And my response was, well, I'm asking my students to be critical readers, right? To read between the lines. Like, I can't do that for my students. Like, if I know what a student's saying, what's the point of, you know, mandating they say it in a certain way? There were a lot of language around like professional email greetings and titles, both of which are important for different reasons. But those professional email greeting mandates also came with often a statement that was, I will not read your email if it does not have a professional greeting in which you spell my name correctly, which seems like a pretty bare minimum expectation until you think, like, you know, if I'm a student in crisis, as, you know, all first year students are at some point in time, am I going to risk having my crisis email not be read because a professor decides, you know, this isn't an acceptable way to communicate with me? There were also, I think, you know, I'm English major through and through. We, you know, co-create a lot of our class guidelines. It's kind of just class I have. But it was really weird to see that kind of language. We're going to co-create the, you know, the rubrics for this assignment. However, this assignment must come in like perfect standard English, whatever that means. One of my favorite studies that's cited at the bottom, Christy Lawton and Julie Decline, two linguists, they actually interviewed English professors nationwide and found, you know, we think there's one correct grammar, right? There are one singular correct grammar rules. And I think it was interesting to find all these English professors they surveyed often had different ideas about what correct grammar was. Ask an English professor about an Oxford comma sometime, right? Like, it's so even these standards that we're saying were standards are not standards. They are really, really different from professor to professor, from class to class, from discipline to discipline. So one of our major takeaways from this research was, you know, in a syllabus, there are a lot of tacit expectations on how is students meant to communicate and be in a classroom. And the thing with tacit expectations are, if you're in the know, you're in the know, and if you're not, you're often kind of left out. So if we're talking about inclusivity, it's really important that we make these tacit expectations heard by our students. So this, my Grammy would always say, common sense is not so common. I would say the same thing about these classroom communication etiquette, academic etiquette. There is not a single standard or norm. So if we're expecting students to come in with that understanding, then our students are often starting off kind of a leg down than they need to be. Okay. Sorry. Just want to make sure. Again, there's a ton to talk about. I kind of wanted to talk about so Core 101 and Core 102 are two classes that I taught in the fall. These are our first year seminar courses. They were developed primarily by our core director, Dr. Jennifer Slinkard, and our summer bridge director, Dr. Corey Brewster. But these are kind of the spaces where we try to make these tacit expectations heard. We focus, these are academic courses with, we have learning outcomes that we're trying to meet, and we develop these as singular courses, not just kind of, you're dipping in and hearing the voice of the day from whatever place of the day. These are courses. In Core 101, we really focus specifically on academic readiness. So focusing specifically on literacy and study skills. One assignment where I think we've really tried to make a lot of these tacit expectations heard is through we do a practice midterm assignment the week before midterms, essentially to get students prepared for those first midterms. One of the things that I sort of position this assignment as is as a, you want to become mind readers. You want to be able to read the minds of your professors to understand what their expectations are going to be. And where you can find those expectations. Syllabus is one place where those expectations can live, but those expectations also live through lectures and lecture notes. We talk through in that class, let's peel back the curtain. Let's look at the wizard behind the curtain. How are people developing these exams? And I think a lot of that is a nice way to talk about these expectations. In Core 102, we do something a little differently. Corey developed this faculty interview assignment, which was one of my favorites that I got to do, where we actually ask students okay, you have this major that you came in with, pick another one just for today. You're going to go interview this professor who is in this discipline or in this major. You're going to talk about things like what are the academic expectations in this major. You're going to talk about what academic work looks like in this major, as a way to both give students like a better, we're a liberal arts college. We want students to be rounded, but we also want students, if they're going to explore different majors, to think about the expectations in those different majors. So we're able to do things like that. I actually asked my students to look at sample syllabi of professors teaching in these classes to get an idea of what the classes are actually going to look like. It was a really cool project. Corey also worked with the library to send students on a hunt looking at professors' former research, which I also got to participate in. And man, it was really weird. I'm in a meta moment where I'm talking about a student who looked up my syllabus research and presented to me on my syllabus research, and now I'm presenting to you about my student presenting to me about my syllabus research. It was great fun. Essentially, again, I think the takeaway that I took away from the syllabus research is, again, not that it's possible or even desirable to create one syllabus above all that is equally accessible and super duper and perfect, because it's just not possible. I think the takeaway instead is, as instructors, as students, you want to really dig into what are the expectations that are encoded in this document. And as we wrote in my chapter that we wrote about this, you want to treat the syllabus as an academic document, just like you would a piece of research, because a similar amount of thought and work has come into developing these things. We are working with Provost Geisinger and other folks with the EAB to do kind of some syllabus analysis stuff. We're kind of early on in the process right now. But this is something that we're working on in the future with those folks. So, I guess, I don't know. Any questions? Sorry, it's came in a little early, but I'm happy to answer questions until I got to go to class.
Hello, Dr. Dyer. Thank you for coming and visiting with us today. I think this research is interesting.
Hi, man. It's fun. Yeah.
Syllabus to me, in my mind, because just the way that, I spent 14 years going to college. So the syllabus was like the contract between me and the professor.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, that you can't have the standard because, it depends. I mean, some classes are highly qualitative, writing focused, some are math focused. And so that's difficult. But you know what I wish we could do? I wish that we wouldn't make it so difficult where the student has to look at what's posted on Canvas, what's on the syllabus, listen to the professor to figure out what their teaching philosophy is. If we just had that, a section in the syllabus for everybody, put in your teaching philosophy, whatever it may be, so that the student can see what, how you look at the world, because that teaching philosophy will shape how everything is done in that class, and I really wish that was the standard.
This was actually a thing that they often did in Texas, because again, if you've gone to Texas, the state mandates about every little thing. Come at me, Texans. Sorry, your state's weird. But because there are so many rules about the syllabus, professors would often develop what are called course information documents, where that syllabus, that teaching philosophy statement would exist. I have a similar, I don't type up a whole course information document, but I have something similar about my policies on AI and plagiarism, where I have, this is my teaching philosophy, here's where it lives, please read it. And this doesn't come with my syllabus, but it's a part of my first day in class. Yeah. Because the syllabus is such a weird thing, as you said, I will put things into a course information document that I might not put into a legal contract with my students, if that's how we're treating a course syllabus. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. But, when I build a syllabus, I always put on the bottom a syllabus to subject to change if something should happen, right? But whenever I make that change, I make sure that it never results in a student hardship, doesn't result in additional assignments in the middle of the timeline, because once they're given that syllabus, they plan their whole semester based on that. And that's just one class. So if you make any changes, it uproots everything.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's why I look at the syllabus as it's kind of a contract. It's set in stone so that the student can plan for the next 10 weeks or whatever. This is my life for this class. So
I actually took that statement off of my syllabus, so subject to change, because I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that's how contracts work.
Well, like you said, it's not a contract. This was I like to think of it as that way in my mind, just so that any changes I make, I'm really cognizant about those changes, so that remember, it will change the life of the student.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Thank you so much for this research. Very interesting.
Oh yeah. And again, I'll show you guys where, if you are interested in reading more, where you can find this work kind of printed somewhere. So
that's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Dyer.
Just wanted to share, when we work on the agendas, one of the things I do is I go to Provost Geisinger and VP Rockefeller, and we talk about which students and which faculty member to bring up. And I just wanted to share on behalf of Provost Geisinger, when I came in, he was like, James Dyer. He's really excited about the research and the work that's being undertaken. And now I see why, getting to watch you here today. It was a really interesting presentation, and really excited to see what comes next.
Yeah. And again, I just want to there are a lot of folks at UU who work in this equity work. I was just the lucky one who got his number drawn, I guess. But other folks involved in some core and Summer Bridge, they definitely have, I think, more EOU related experience to share in this situation. So I'm just kind of in my third year, so I'm still kind of a relative newbie.
Yeah, and we had Summer Bridge last year at the meeting. Yeah, so yeah.
Other questions? Are there any online?
I do have a quick question. Yeah, I do have a quick question. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dyer. You make me think about syllabi that I wrote or read in a completely different way. So I have a quick question. We just heard student success completion model. In your expert opinion, a student success is influenced by the syllabus on the course by 0.1%, 5%, 13.8%. How does it really make a difference? Is that pertinent? Man. Is that relevant? That's what I'm saying. You probably have.
I'm a qualitative researcher, so you're killing me. I won't deal in percentages, but I will say this the Joyce Bowers Campbell study that I cited. They did more, I think, classroom audit work where syllabi were included as a data point, and it's kind of hard to tell, how influenced the student is by a document that they oftentimes don't read. If we're being blunt about it, I think so. It's kind of hard to postulate on the, what actual effect, again, developing the perfect Uber syllabus would have on student success. That's kind of why my approach in these classes is never, I can't teach you one standard for everything, but I can show you that there are different standards in different places. So I think syllabus literacy, I would equate with academic literacy, which there's a lot of research on, what academic literacy looks like in terms of student success. So if you ask me academic literacy and it's, percentage equivalent to student success, yeah, let's just go 100%. Let's go.
100%. That's your number. That's pretty cool. And do we have an EOU award?
We can say stuff like that. Yeah.
Are we developing an EOU award with the best syllabus ever written on campus? That would be a cool one. Thank you. I appreciate it. Very interesting.
I'd win the award for most cat pictures in my syllabus, I think. Yeah. Just a little preview. So that's, I think.
There you go.
Thanks.
How could you swear at those?
So we find ways.
So I have a question, but I don't know if I can frame it correctly. I guess qualitatively speaking, again, since you have been working on practical application of your research, I guess my question is, what impacts of those applications have you seen? What have you learned from applying the results of your research, and how has that affected your teaching?
Yeah, I think on a curricular level, it has kind of influenced my, again, approach to, I'm not going to teach a student how to read everything. I'm going to teach a student that there are different ways to read things. And I think that's the, there's a theory of disciplinary literacy where there's never one way to do anything. Different disciplines do different things. And again, it's kind of hard to extrapolate from syllabus stuff just because, I will usually have a syllabus quiz. It's, graded for 1 million points. I tell my students on the first day. Just kidding. But it's mainly for me, I'm looking at, my students need to get what they need to get from the syllabus. That is like attendance, absence policies, late work stuff. And the academic expectation portion, what I typically do is I'll go through the term with the assignments. This is in Core 101. And I will direct things back to a specific learning outcome. And this is, I think, a connection that I really want students to see is, and this is maybe a nice leave over from the syllabus as contract ideology, but, this is how I want students to say. So I can connect this assignment that I'm doing to this outcome. And if a student, is kind of misunderstanding an assignment, I think one nice way to kind of get back on track is to look at the outcome this assignment is meant to fulfill. And that's one thing at the very end of the term, I actually have students usually print out other syllabi because they've thrown them away already. But we return to those outcomes, and I tell my students in your final reflection essay, these are the outcomes. You're going to write to me which assignments you felt fit those outcomes, and how you feel as a student you've met those. That works for my class. I don't know that would work in like a chemistry class or even a literature class. Which is why syllabi is so hard. The more time with community college instructors in particular, you have to make an argument. Why is this worth your time? Because your time's already so stretched. It's sometimes kind of a hard argument to spend a ton of time on this thing where your course is jam-packed anyways. Does that answer your question? I feel like I just kind of rambled. I might have just rambled.
No, it was a rambling question, so I appreciate the rambling answer.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Geoghegan.
Sure. Really quick, I'll just say that I love the work that you're doing. That's the lower level, but as they go up, you actually can do that. I actually tell students, I cover learning outcomes and I give them assignments and say, this is what you're expected to learn after completion of it. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the term, I say, okay, good. All those learning outcomes, now put all those things you did put those on your resume.
Yeah.
Because now you're able to critically analyze NPV or all these learning outcomes. They become skill that you have, right? So, and when you show them that they can do that, and they get excited about that syllabus. What else from this syllabus can I put on my resume? You know, I mean, what else have I actually gained from it? So, I love that you did. This kind of becomes a living document. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up cover letters too. When I haven't done this at UU, but at Texas State, when I would teach students, cover letters, it's literally like bringing in your syllabi from your advanced, classes and pulling in your work and being able to talk about in this the learning outcomes. So I'm glad you brought up that connection. That I'm not crazy for having approached it that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Trustee Mendoza.
Thanks for your presentation. If you were to make recommendations for EOU in terms of what all professors should do, what best practices or what equity outcomes, what learning outcomes, what rubrics that should be done or what grading scales, that's something that's of interest to me if you're trying to make it better. So those recommendations. And then the bigger one for me would be how much do you involve students prior to, or how much should we involve students, especially those that are disadvantaged or those that are at risk or those that experience, I'll just say, disabilities or even focal group populations, so that their lived life experience is considered as part of the syllabus. So to me, trying to do, if the research is the research, how do we propagate some of those practices better in this institution?
Oh man, now you're speaking my language. First question, I think I would avoid making any recommendations that should be applied to all professors in all disciplines, because I really like my job and I don't want my colleagues to yell at me. But facetiously, but I think in reality, I think those expectations have to look different for different classes. And it's really hard for me to think what's an equitable approach to expectations in a business class, because they don't teach business. But for first year classes, I can talk a lot about those. And if you want to, I think linguistic diversity isn't quite as relevant here. It certainly is, but not as much as there was in Texas, where a huge percentage of our students were multilingual. But I talk about what grammar is in my syllabus, and I talk about it in class. And I say, if you're getting corrected on your grammar by a professor, 9 times out of 10, they don't know why they're correcting your grammar in the way that they are. We talk about how there's no standard for language that is universal. It's the ideology of appropriateness versus the ideology of worth. If you want to get really into the weeds, there's this misunderstanding that because there's a standard, it's a standard for a certain reason. Because there's a standard way to communicate, it's that way for a certain reason. In reality, a lot of the standards we have here are, put in place by, generations of the richest of the rich are the only ones that go to college. The white upper class are the only ones that go to college, and this is why the standards are a certain way. And it might not be purposeful why we keep those standards, but that's where the standards come from. And we have those conversations in my classes when we talk about standard language ideologies. But that's kind of in the weeds. But that's I love having those conversations with students. Yeah, does that kind of answer your question? I feel like I similarly rambled.
I think it's fine, but I do think that if there's going to be anything that improves this institution, it's seeing how do people change some of the practices, and in particular for me, I do think students' voice and hearing some of students' voice as folks reflect or share their syllabus might help them to improve the learning experience of the student. Thanks.
The coolest thing that I saw someone do on a syllabus that I haven't really been able to replicate entirely was where and this is crazy if it's a contract, but they left those expectations, a lot of them blank on the syllabus. And on the first, second, third days, students met in little groups, and they co-created these expectations for how they're going to be assessed on different assignments. And it's a hard thing to pull off, but I think that is a really if you're looking for a practical recommendation out of all this, certainly something to try. And it was enlightening for me as well, for my students to tell me what they thought they should be graded on. Does that get a little closer to? Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much for your work, your presentation, your enthusiasm. Does anyone have any further questions?
I do.
Connor.
So I'm sure student individuality matters a lot, but do you find that flexibility or rigidness in a syllabus has students meet their outcome better?
Yeah, I try really hard to be scary on the first day, but I don't know. I'm not scary. I'm a squish. I think there's something to be said for having expectations that you state, but then all the understanding in the world for students who anything that can happen your first year will happen. So if any of my students are listening, please don't be. The things like attendance policies, there's always a reason why a student misses. There's always a reason why a student turns in an assignment late. And that reason is very often not because they're lazy or because they, are unengaged. There's always a reason, and it's usually not, I think, what our first assumption is. So, yeah, I'm a total squish, and I will stand on that as long as my students are listening. Yeah. Is that an answer? Yeah.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
See, thanks, y'all. I gotta go teach.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you've heard me talk quite a bit about how I've had some concerns that even though I recognize that the Board of Trustees and the Foundation Board need to keep each other at an arm's length relationship, that's just the nature of the business. I felt that it's been my interpretation. It's been a little bit more distance than it needs to be, particularly as we enter this capital campaign and start working together. So we are now going to have our annual foundation report. Tyler and Tim are going to present that along with, I've invited our foundation chair, our foundation board chair and vice chair, James Gorham and Brett Gunderson, to join us. So we've, as I've mentioned, we've all met and talked, and we're all in agreement that there's an opportunity to work together a little more closely. President Ryan.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm kind of blown away right now by the power of this room. We've got the Board of Trustees and our chair of the foundation. So it doesn't get much better than this, huh?
Exactly. So, gentlemen, who would like to start?
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. We were going to start with the campaign feasibility study update and then review the dashboard, if that works. And then we have Mike Westby, our campaign counsel, online with us, and so he's joined us via the Zoom. And what we'll do is we'll run through the update, and then afterwards answer any questions. And Mike's here to answer any questions on from his perspective as the campaign counsel. So let me share here, and we'll get started. Mm-hmm. What I need to do now is, apologies, I need my glasses here. I could see what I need to do and find the magic button. All right, so we started this a number of months ago. And the study update includes factors that we're celebrating over 100 years of service, looking at transformational investments, but the study itself is grounded in community-supported feasibility findings, and that's where Mike Westby and Associates comes in with having these interviews, discussing where we're at with the campaign and some of the key concepts of the campaign with our donors and our alumni and external interested parties to have that, if you will, anonymous or straight dialogue where folks can share what they really think. And the reason you do it, of course, these tests is to find out if what we're thinking about what we need is actually getting traction out in the public. Do our donors support it, or are they saying, well, that's not really a reasonable request? And then how do we adjust for that? And what do we find out in those conversations? So we were testing a campaign of around 29 million. This isn't a set in stone number. This is what we're testing. It could change. We were focused on around $12 million of capital. That does include funding support that we could match or leverage for Loso Hall that we just talked about in a previous item. Also funding for the baseball fields and softball complex that came up there. We have donors actually lined up in that aspect. We also talked about the potential funding of expansion of our field house. We'd love to get a full 200-meter track in there, but there's a price tag for that. And those types of projects, whether it's the field house or the baseball, softball complex, as John Garlitz noted, are not funded in the same way by the state of Oregon. There's not G bonds that we get. They're not academic facilities. They're extracurricular. So those have to be funded through other means, notably things like donor resources and or other areas that may leverage something like economic development around, for example, lottery bonds. And then the last piece of that we still have on the list that we hear from donors about still is about our beautiful grand staircase, and are there things that people want to add to their gift that might be able to help add to the staircase. So we're keeping down there on there. Again, this is what we're testing to find out what the reactions are when we talk about these projects, or are there other things that come up. Somebody may bring up another topic that we can work on. Scholarships, easily, and you'll see in our dashboard, easily the largest, most important thing our donors tell us that they want to support is our students. How do they help them come to Eastern? How do we help them complete at Eastern and graduate at Eastern, which I know VP Case really loves, because that works very well with the formula, especially if they're Oregon students. And then public funding of trying to leverage some additional outside resources as part of the campaign that we could bring in there. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over innovation. And that's the area that really brings us the capacity to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Many of the ideas that come up at this board, the alumni board, or the foundation board, or even amongst our faculty and staff require funding. Launching a new academic program is not an inexpensive endeavor, and we need to figure out how we can make those things happen. We do know that if we invest in those projects and they're part of our academic master plan, as they will be, that those resources to start those programs will be available, that we can invest in the needs of the university, no matter where it's at. But that gives us the flexibility to do something that we wouldn't otherwise normally be able to do. Those resources, as we know from discussions about the state budget, are not going to be out there. We can't just go write a grant or ask the state legislature for funding when there's no funding available. But we can do it through philanthropy. They can support us, and that gives us actually a little more flexibility with those resources. So what have we been doing, or rather, really, what has Mike been up to? 36 interviews over our goal for the feasibility campaign, a quantified support range of upwards of $10+ million. We have a 97% gift identification rate, which is really good. We're extending this. It's in the slide later, as well as one of the recommendations that have come forth in our midterm report. So we've been out talking to a lot of individuals. What are we finding? Really 100% awareness of EOU, strong support, and a broad endorsement, particularly around access and affordability and excellence in our programs. Whether we're talking to our alumni who graduated in the 60s or 50s or even earlier, or we're talking about alumni who graduated recently, or business owners in the region and even really throughout the Western U.S., they see us as an access institution, and they see that the quality of our programs are outstanding. Accolades we're hearing that are coming back include the fact that we play a critical role in workforce development, that we have a great foundation team, and that centennial timing is seen as a really important part of the campaign to leverage that 100th anniversary of the university to really put a stake in the ground and help us make ourselves even more known in the region, and to do good things with that anniversary. What are the key issues that we want to address? Stewardship and transparency, ensuring that people know what's going on. That comes down to ongoing communication with our donors, ensuring that not only are they making a gift or in the process of making a gift, that we're keeping them updated as to what's happening, and that we have the needed sit downs with them. And those those are easy to do in some ways, you think, and then it's really hard to do that at the same time because you've got to have more people to do that. It's much better to do those conversations about stewardship in person, whether it's myself or President Ryan or Tyler, or James or even Brent sitting down and visiting with donors and answering their questions and making sure they know what we're working on here at the university. And it's not easy because there's so many moving parts, even at a regional small university like we are. People would like to see more clarity on our innovation investments. These are buyers' questions. I think, as Mike put it, is that people are really interested and they're leaning into, tell me more about this innovation fund and what we can do with it and how that can leverage the support of the university and how we can grow with that. And then, what does our sustainability look like in the future and our future planning? And these are things that we'll be able to continue to flesh out as we move into the next phases of the campaign, answer those questions, but they're all across the board been very good questions that are coming, not really coming as criticisms, but more of an investor's question about how can I learn more about this? How can I help support what you're doing? The recommendations had been to extend the feasibility capacity with high capacity prospects, which we've done. Mike's been continuing that, and he's continuing that process. He'll actually be in town next week to meet with our foundation board and alumni boards, as well as do some additional donor interviews in this region. We need to strengthen that case for support and stewardship messaging, which is part of the plan. Certainly moving forward, it's not as though we end with just the feasibility study. Then we're rolling into developing communication materials, marketing materials, whether it's videos and publications and documents that share out much broader slideshow presentations with more information about these components of the campaign that we're moving forward with that we can provide a deeper dive with. Taking those folks out who are most interested in those areas. So it's nothing like sitting down with a professor and having them talk about, like James, talk about their passion for what they're studying and what they're doing, and just get them in the room with the donor and let them go. Take our deans out and have them connect with donors and have those conversations and just talk about their passion. They don't have to make an ask. That's what we do, but they can certainly convey the passion, the importance of philanthropic support. And of course, people really agree that we should link the campaign vision to the centennial milestone, which we are doing. So that's also in the recommendations box. Looking ahead, the feedback has been that we're positioned well. We have good community support. It's growing, it's expanding, and we really do have the opportunity to shape the next 100 years. I think Mike could probably comment on this as well. We've just heard a lot of folks about where we're going in the future, not only what we've done, but using that centennial as a launch pad for the future of Eastern. People want to see us be sustainable. They want to see us be successful, and they want to see us be really good with our students and to complete our mission that's out there. So I'll stop there. I'll ask Mike if he wants to add any comments to any of the pieces of the campaign.
Mike, I think you're muted.
Oh, yep, he's still muted. Still muted. I don't know if there's any way we can unmute him from our end. I don't believe there is.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Way to go.
You're good. Good to go.
Hey, it's good to be with you guys. Thanks, Tim. I think that was an excellent summary. Part of our model is absolute transparency. So even if I wasn't in the process of trying to retire, and I am retiring at the end of March, I'd still be saying this. The way that we approach our work is that we try to be so transparent in our work that you need less of us moving forward than more of us. So I think Tim is an example of that. He did an excellent job in summarizing the campaign. I would add to that, I think three main things to think of, and then I would welcome any questions that you guys have. And certainly we've tried to keep this report at a 30,000 foot level. There will be a deeper dive report that will get shared towards the end of our work, towards the end of March, and we'll be doing a one-on-one that I've talked to Dr. Ryan about. She's excited to hear, which will be kind of her eyes only first, so she gets to see the deeper granular dive on this, and then that will get shared with everybody else. We'll be doing a report out, inviting everybody who participated in the study to come together either in person or virtually, so we can report out the findings of the study. For the purpose of today and trying to honor that high level threshold, I would say that the campaign case, your campaign case, first of all, linked to the 100-year, that's important. The campaign case needs to be about three things that are all important. And these are things that you guys shared, all three boards, the alumni board, the foundation board, the trustees, and Dr. Ryan, and speaking for administration, I believe as well, that these were all important to you. I want to say that they're 100% important to the people we spoke to in the study, and therefore distilling this down to its essential verbiage. This campaign case is about maintaining accessibility, intimacy, and excellence. And pulling all three of those things off is very, very challenging to do. And that is the reason why you need, I'll use we, since I've been so closely working with you, we need to convey in a case why we need help. Why is the public support not enough? Because we're trying to maintain an excellence level, or a level of accessibility, intimacy, and excellence. The issues that were identified in the study, stewardship and transparency, so that there's more involvement. I heard talking about the boards working closer together. That's part of this and this deeper dive that President Ryan will get. So stewardship and transparency is a banner. Clarity on that innovation fund. It started really slow. The wheels were slipping around, but we started to get some traction on this thing. This was Dr. Ryan's idea of calling it this innovation fund. Now that we've sort of got some flesh on it, we've got some traction on it, I'd love to see where that's going to go. And there is a desire, buyer's question level desire to hear more about how that innovation fund would be prioritized and be used. And then finally, sustainability and financial planning, so that this campaign fits into a solution for the long term, the decades long model. And that is, I think, in close alignment and appropriate alignment with thematically with the 100-year campaign. There is a working title that was suggested from our study that I just thought had merit. It doesn't need to be your title for the campaign, but it wasn't a bad idea. The next century. So I'll leave it there. Again, Tim, excellent. It's been great to work with you and Tyler, with the president and with her administration and with all three boards. If this is the last chance I really get to talk to you other than in the report out, I just want to thank you for the confidence that you shared or that you showed in us and that we've shared with your community. Questions?
Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate the hard work that you've put into this, and I can only wish you the best in your retirement and hope that you're much better at it than I am. President Ryan, did you want to make some comments?
Sure. I just want to say that I think these interviews have not only helped us define the campaign, but it's generating the excitement and enthusiasm we need. Just as one example of how just these interviews are gaining traction for us in terms of donations. Tyler and I met with an individual a couple weeks ago for our signature coffee date. And, the person shared with me, and this is also to Mike's point, I'm really interested in that innovation fund. It's the most, and he said this quote, unsexy thing that's on the list, but I can see that it's very important, right? And so I think these interviews are doing a good job in getting phase one support. As you've seen, people are hearing about what we're doing. And, I think Mike being out there is also critical. We need our individuals in the community talk to to people in a way that they don't have to worry about offending anybody, right? I mean, having someone who is contracted helps us get real information rather than maybe something that might be more generously shared with us if it was one of our staff, right? So I just think it's been really important work, and I am really looking forward to that meeting with Mike, and of course getting this rolling. This is something I'm just extraordinarily enthusiastic about. I don't know that this campaign will get us through the next 100 years, but certainly we would want to get it to the next campaign. So I'm excited in any case, and I think it's a fun idea for a title.
We're looking forward to the next 100 years. We're not financing it. We're looking forward. We're not just looking backward. James and Brent, thanks so much for being here. Any comments that you two might want to make?
I spoke with Mike. We went through the process as well, and I think the questions are great. As President Ryan said, I think it's good to have that third party that can ask these questions. He's done this for so long. He's very good at just kind of bringing those answers out of you without it feeling like putting you on the spot. So I think he does an amazing job, and he's able to get a lot of really good information that's going to help us as we move forward to this. So I think he's been a great investment, and it's really been very helpful.
Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot to add to that. I haven't personally went through the interview process, but I do believe that what Dr. Ryan's saying is absolutely true. Anytime you get a third party involved and asking questions, you're going to get different answers. And I think that's been important. I've personally been really impressed with Mike and his team, and happy that we engaged their firm. So I don't have anything else to add.
Thanks. Tyler, you're leaning a little bit to port there, so.
I've got more information later, so I'll pass for the moment. So I don't have much to add to this.
And any board members, any trustees have any questions for our four guests or for Mike? Hearing done, yeah, let's go on into the dashboard.
So before we get to the dashboard, I'm just going to speak for a minute here and just talk a little bit about the foundation itself. For those of you that I have not had a chance to meet with personally, my name is James Gorham. I'm the chair of the foundation. I'm an EOU alumni, physical therapist, and CEO of Mount Valley Therapy here in La Grande, and a very proud supporter of the university. I joined the foundation as a trustee in 2017, stepped into a board position in 2020, and have had the privilege of serving as chair since October of 2023. My involvement with the foundation is incredibly personal. Like many of us, my connection to EOU is rooted in opportunity. As I said, I'm a physical therapist and an owner of a clinic here in town. None of this would have been possible without the 4-year scholarship I received here at EOU as a student. So it's very personal to me. That belief in me, the investment in me, is what led myself and my wife, Tracy, to establish a scholarship fund here at EOU. And it's what continues to motivate my service today. The EOU Foundation was founded in 1964 with a clear mission to serve and support Eastern Oregon University and its students. We are a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization governed by a volunteer board composed of alumni and non-alumni donors who believe deeply in EOU's mission. Today, the foundation manages more than $27 million in assets across more than 450 individual funds. Growth that reflects both strong stewardship and growing confidence in EOU's future. But I want to emphasize something important. The foundation's partnership with EOU extends beyond the scholarships we award, though those remain central to our work. Each year, we offer over $1 million in privately funded scholarships that expand access and reduce financial barriers for students. We also provide direct funding support to clubs, academic departments, programs, and campus initiatives that would not otherwise have resources available to them. Equally important, the foundation invests in the infrastructure necessary to ensure we are a net contributor to the university, not a drain on it. That includes supporting foundation staff positions and funding campaign counsel to prepare for the comprehensive campaign ahead. We also pay for our own operations, including our annual audit, our database, and financial systems, development staff travel, and events. These investments strengthen our ability to raise more private support, build long-term sustainability, and ultimately return greater value to EOU. In short, our role is to amplify the university's mission through strategic philanthropy, responsibility, efficiently, and in alignment with the institution's priorities. Over the past year, we've continued advancing our strategic focus around engagement, investment, and enhancement. Alumni engagement is growing. Estate gifts are increasing. Our investment portfolio remains strong and is growing. And our collaboration with campus leadership has deepened in meaningful ways. I also want to specifically acknowledge how much the board, the foundation board, and the alumni board have appreciated the increased collaboration with the Board of Trustees. It really meant a lot. Chair Hoffman reached out to our boards, both the foundation and the alumni board, and just really invited a close collaboration with the Board of Trustees, and that has really meant a lot. I think it's very important as we move forward into this comprehensive campaign. So thank you for that invitation. As we have this opportunity for more intentional communication and partnership, I think as Tim mentioned, as we grow and we need those connections, we need that opportunity for all of us, when we know our colleagues, our friends, when those people see our passion for EOU, it's only going to move forward. And that connection then allows Tyler and Tim that opportunity to talk to those people. And so as we move forward with this comprehensive campaign, that's just so vital. We don't have to make the big ask. They see our passion and they're gonna want to be a part of that. So I appreciate that connection very much. We are preparing thoughtfully for our campaign, and that preparation includes building engagement pipelines, strengthening internal systems, refining priorities, and ensuring we have the right external counsel and expertise in place. We are being intentional now so that when we move forward into a full campaign mode, we do so with a position of strength. We'll discuss the progress of the campaign research thus far and what we expect next. With that context, I'll ask Tim to walk us through the 2025 Foundation Dashboard, which provides a deeper look at our performance metrics, fundraising activity, investment growth, and operational indicators from the past year. The dashboard highlights some of the significant accomplishments of the foundation over the past year, with impressive growth of estate gifts and a more robust investment portfolio has contributed to the strength and growth of the foundation. Tim?
Thanks, James. Appreciate those comments.
All right, so we'll do. I've got it even more smoothly working for sharing the slide deck. I'll be doing this, and Tyler will be adding some color commentary as we go along the way, particularly around some of our work and some of these items. So yeah, think of it like you're watching the NFL today or something, and I won't pick out who we are. You can make that up for yourself.
Just exactly like the NFL today.
We need those guys all wear really fancier suits. Maybe we need to get some of those. The dashboard is something we've been doing quite a while with between the foundation board and the governing board. They'll just give you an update and really keying off on here's the big areas that we're focused in on. This gives you an idea of the gifts by designation. As you can see, 81% of the funds, the donations we received went to scholarships. That's by far and away the largest component of what people want to support with them. But there's also 9% of it for academic and other program support, for athletics, and then buildings and equipment, as you can see as well. The annual fund is a piece that we're tracking a little more separately to see how we're doing with those direct annual asks that go out to alumni. Total giving through 2025, this can show you the amount of funds that were restricted versus unrestricted. Unrestricted funds did grow this last year, which was wonderful because those come in as, these are really kind of what you call board designated funds. We can use those for a lot of a lot of items or to put them where they need to go to support the foundation itself or our programs or what we can do to help students and faculty. You can see the restricted is very large. This is part because we have a growing understanding of how philanthropy works, not only at the university, but I think across the nation. And our alumni are wanting to give their specific item. Doesn't mean that there's a problem with it. It means they're saying, well, I really want, when I give to EOU, I want it to go to support the men's basketball team, or I want it to go to support the art department. And that's therefore a restricted fund. And we put it to that art department. We let the art department know you have funds here and you can use them. And here's, if there's any restrictions on them, here's how you can use those funds. But the growth there is really the overall growth is what we're looking at. Are we getting up above our metrics and our marks? Estate bequests. This is actually one of Tyler's work areas he works really well in. You see this bar up here, and we were looking at it the other day, and 2021 we saw this huge growth between 2021 and 22. Well, what was happening at that time frame? There was a pandemic going on. There's a lot of people who were thinking about their mortality. And that led to a lot of people saying, I want to get you into I want to make this request known. I want to document it. I want to be having EOU in my will. And then we saw a slow decrease. Actually, the 24 and 25 numbers are actually pretty consistent with what we've seen in the past. However, we've seen some significant estate bequests come in. Tyler, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. We had a couple come in this year specifically, both of them out of Washington State. And how many of you got the magazine, the calendar? Steve Carter was in there. That was one of them. And then also Carol Flackus out of Washington State. So that I guess Washington is the winner. We work with people all over the Northwest specifically, and really all over the country. But there's been a lot going on. So those were the two this year. Thanks.
And just an additional point of clarification, you might add, well, what was Steve's?
Oh, that's a
gift
great
in regards to
Steve. If you haven't gotten, I think he's the month of May, but it was for the baseball field. So he is a Hall of Fame baseball player. He's in our Hall of Fame here, and he really has a desire to see a baseball field built in his lifetime here at Eastern. So that's his goal. So thank you.
And if you haven't read the story in the magazine, it's great. He was a student, was served in Vietnam, came back, worked on his degree. Later in his life, at a Hall of Fame ceremony, found out that he actually hadn't graduated from EOU. He hadn't passed what we used to have called the writing proficiency exam. And I think, James and Brent are like cringing. And his teammates marched him over to Inlow and met with the registrar and said, what do we need to do to get this guy to graduate? And he did some documentation. He got credit for life experience, and he was able to complete his degree. So he didn't officially graduate until just a few years ago, but he attended and played baseball here in the 70s. So it's those great stories about finding out how teammates don't let each other, and that's his big thing. Teammates stay teammates. That's really a neat story. Speaking of alumni, we also look at the number of gifts, total gifts, and then the number of gifts from degreed alumni. Degreed alumni is really the national standard that we follow with our professional organization. It's people with an actual degree from Eastern, but we also like to count all of our alumni because we have so many people that attend here, may go on into some of our partner programs as they had for many years, 2 years, and then maybe go to the OHSU nursing program. But at the same time, they're playing on our basketball or volleyball teams. And then they graduate from OHSU and they feel that Eastern is their home institution. So they count themselves as alumni. So we do too. But you can see there's some steady growth there over the total gifts, and gifts come from degreed alumni. Board giving by calendar year and historical giving. We added the historical giving part this year just to see, I've had so many questions on it. So just to clarify that everyone on the foundation board is a donor. They have either made a donation, they've not just a small one, but the reason why we see so many of them is because they've made substantial estate or endowment gifts, and they set up a scholarship as James and Tracy did, or something along those lines. And then we have the Alumni Association board and the board of trustees here. So where our challenge is to get you all to 100% to make sure that's happening on a year-over-year basis.
And just quickly on that one, again, I want to thank Chair Hoffman. I know he extended a challenge to his board last year of that giving, and you could see both with alumni and the EOU board, that number has gone up over these last few years. And so it is our goal. And I think that collaboration with all three boards can get us to that 100% across the board.
And not to fear, but and Tyler could probably comment on this. You'll be hearing from him shortly.
Yes, we're first of all, we should say thank you to everyone in this room who gave last year. That was phenomenal. So we appreciate it. Thank you for giving your time here at the board level, but also your finances. And keep your eyes peeled. Look for a letter from yours truly. It'll be arriving in your mailboxes hopefully shortly. So asking you to give in 2026.
So our foundation net assets have grown. This is also due, you'll see another chart, but due to it's been a pretty healthy stock market, as our financial planner is well aware, which has really helped us grow the assets. And those are funds that we pool with U.S. Bank Trust. We just met with them this week. The week's blur. We just met with them this week and saw the performance of our endowments and our portfolio. And while they're projecting continued growth, probably not in the, what would we have, about 14% growth, probably not in that category, but certainly some substantial growth. Those are resources then we put back into those scholarships and grow those scholarship funds so that we can offer more scholarships. So every scholarship, depending on the capacity of that scholarship, to give you an example, a $1 million scholarship would generate on average, in a conservative look at about 5% a year. That's $50,000 annually. Well, that could be $10,000 scholarships to students, or it could be, $5,000 scholarships. You can split that up in different ways. But if that fund continues to grow and we receive additional resources in it, we can offer to more students. So that's really how we're growing those endowment assets. Here's the foundation year-to-date investment yield. And I don't know if Brent wants to comment on this at all, but you can definitely see the drop in 2022 during the pandemic, and then remarkable growth. I think in 2022 we were all pretty worried about what was going to happen. I think everybody in the world was worried about what was going to happen, but we saw steep increases then in yield results, and then a small drop in 24, but then a real nice uptick in 25, and that's what we're projecting. Okay. And then our foundation scholarship awards comes down to a lot of what we do. So the blue line is the number of available awards that we're offering, and the red line is the number that we're actually able to disperse. We do this in concert with our financial aid office. Actually, we just did a training earlier this week with our volunteers to look at the scholarship applications and start ranking them and doing that process so that we can send out award letters to students and let them know that they've received a foundation scholarship. And then if those students don't receive that scholarship, we try to re-award it as often as possible. Some of the scholarships have criteria that we've tried to tier out. So if it's not a music major from Imbler High School, that if there's not one available who applies for a scholarship that year, then we can make it any student from Imbler High School who is applying to EOU. And then maybe beyond that, it might be any student from Union County. So we try to spread those out so that we can make sure that those funds are awarded. We're also looking at, in concert with some of our strategies teams work here, about how we can offer a second round of applications, particularly in the early fall. We have a lot of students who come to Eastern and they don't get here until July or June, and they're missing out. And we always are saying, well, let's see what we can do to re-award those funds. Well, if we open up a second round of applications in the early fall, say in September or October, those students who didn't have a chance to access some of the funds who weren't in the previous pool could get into that pool and apply and say, here's my background. Maybe I am a music major from Imbler. And suddenly, voila, we have a student who fits the criteria, and we can give them those awards. So something we want to see that red line go up, ideally to where it meets, right? They're at the same level. We're not only awarding the funds, but getting them into the hands of students.
Tim, before you go on that slide, that gap is so large. I heard what you just said about, maybe opportunities at different times of the year to fill it, but that looks like a very large gap to me. And I guess my question is, do we have strategies to, I don't know that it's good policy to have awards available and not awarded. So I guess my question is, do we have strategies to try to close that gap?
Yeah, that's what I was commenting about the second round of funding, and about doing more reawarding that's aligned with our financial aid office. So we're getting those students who maybe are out there that are not didn't receive a scholarship, and then we could find the criteria that meets with them.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know if that's working. Looking at that.
Well, the second rounding, we haven't done that.
Oh, that's a new program.
That's a new program that we're looking to put in place for this fall. And then we're also working with our financial aid office to more closely align. So when they have additional applications come in for financial aid, it'd be great to work with them and find out that if there's students who are eligible for scholarships that we have, we could check in our scholarship application database and see if there's resources for them.
Maybe a booth out in the commons. Free money in my way.
And I think there's also an opportunity zone that we really need to push the foundation on with moving to earlier time periods of granting in our admissions cycle, because we've been able to move our financial aid office earlier, and it would be better if we could align the foundation scholarships there as well, so that we can give a total package that a student is more likely to accept. So I'm quite hopeful the foundation will be able to come more in alignment in coming years, because stalling out means losing students, right? As finances are the most critical component in where a student chooses to attend. So hoping next year in particular, we come more in alignment. And I think that could really help with the gap there too.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing that gap close next year.
Yeah.
Next year's slide, look forward to it.
And we have been working with our financial aid in some years when we had the gap, for example, with the FAFSA gap, we were able to do all of our wording and get word out to students before the university because they were slowed down by some of the federal issues. So we were able to get that word out to them sooner, and aligning those is right on the path of what we're doing. No, that's fine. That's why we're here. For questions you might have.
Any of the trustees have any questions? Thank you for that very interesting presentation. So, anyone? Trustee Rio.
I was just interested when we were talking on the first graph with unrestricted and restricted gift giving. How do those conversations go? Like, how do you convince people to leave it unrestricted? Because I think for myself, I have a couple programs, like, I'd want to support them directly. I'd imagine a lot of people have those strong feelings. So how do you overcome that hurdle?
Well, that's a challenge. And those are fun conversations to have. One of the things I'll highlight over this past year is, and really this is in large part to Susanna Moore and Emily Leo Diaz in our office, our annual fund push was very successful, and we saw growth there. A lot of donors who come to here and want to help students, they have an idea. To your point about, I've got an area I want to support, or I was, I played this sport, or I majored in this. So you have to lean into those conversations, and also at the same time explain, what Tim was pointing out. We pay for a lot of the services and staff and all those things, and so you have to make people aware of that and hope that they'll come along with you on some level. But a lot of times it is difficult. So.
I think too, for me, and it is my job to love all parts of the university, but I give in an unrestricted manner because I know it lifts all of us up, right? And it also is the easiest to distribute. The more we have these kind of rarefied Imbler music, for example, the more difficult it is to find students who are going to go to college. And if you think about our rural mission and our post-secondary mission, which is to bring as many Eastern Oregonians and Oregonians writ large through the university, we do our best work when we don't demand that they have interest in a particular field. That being said, one understands our donors have passions and they shaped and molded you. And so, we take all kinds, but unrestricted does help.
And I think what I've seen that Tyler does an amazing job. Like you said, that person wants to start out with a very specific gift in their department or an area they have. And then Tyler's able to take that and then say, well, on top of that, here's some other things. So it kind of gets them in the door with this restricted gift and starts them in on with EOU. And then Tyler can take that and really explain those other things and has turned that into, more donations on an unrestricted level. So it kind of gets them their foot in the door. We never want to turn down a restricted gift, but it gets their foot in the door. And then we can start to talk about the other things and that we have to offer and what unrestricted giving means for the entire university.
Brett, go ahead.
Just want to quickly add on there because I think that was an astute observation by Chairman Hoffman regarding that gap we were talking about on that one slide. Part of that, I think, is directly related to this discussion that we've just had. Is you've seen this increase of restricted gifting and putting too restrictive of gifts in there, so they can't get awarded, right? So part of that is, to our defense, is a product of the restriction of the donor, but we can do probably a better job of educating our donors to try to close that gap. Right.
In the interest of transparency, I want to point out that the president pointed that gap out to me before you put the slide up. And I'm going, where did you get that slide?
I read before I come.
She cheated.
Yeah. It's also my job to know stuff.
We've talked a little bit about Mike's retirement, but we haven't talked about what our plans are going forward. So maybe we better spend a minute talking about that.
Knowing full well that Mike is trying to get into a full retirement, we started a little while ago researching firms that could offer counsel. We looked at large firms who were the big major, you call them like the top 10, these large firms, mostly out of like Chicago and places like Los Angeles and Baltimore. And then we also interviewed some mid-level firms, some smaller ones, and then some really more smallish firms. We've found over the years that we work pretty well with a smaller firm, like similar to Mike's, where we're not a small fish in a big pond, but instead that we're a big fish in a small pond. And we've identified the Ann Allen Group, and we presented that information to the foundation in terms of requesting funding for support of the campaign council going forward. And we're working on contracting with Katie Rohr, who's the chair or owns that company, to start coming in, and there'll be some overlap time with her and Mike so that they can connect and share information and have that handoff take place. So there's not a big gap. And then we'll start in on the next phase of the campaign will be some of these things that Mike pointed out as refinements of what we've heard in the interviews and the feasibility studies.
Thanks, Tim. Cedric?
Oh, thanks. Just a follow-up question. You may have mentioned it, but what would be an ideal unrestricted goal? Like, what are you guys shooting for as a foundation? Where would we like to get ideally?
Mm-hmm. A big piece of that has to do with the budget that we have to fund our own operations. I don't have the 2026 budget in front of me at the moment, but there is an annual fund goal in unrestricted giving specifically in that budget, and I can follow up with that and get that information to you guys, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you all, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming. I've made an offer that should they desire my presence or any of our presence at their foundation board meetings, I'm happy to be there, but I fully understand that they want me to stay away. So, okay. Well, thanks again. So, as we transition, we're going to spend a few minutes. As Chris and I talked, he mentioned a process that the president's help me cabinet. Why do I keep blocking on charter? Anyway, the president's cabinet uses at the end of their meeting, where they talk about key takeaways from the meetings. Now, this is a separate activity from what George started, where we go around and reflect. We will do that after this, but this, as we focus on a unified message to leave the meeting with, that's really what we're talking about here. What are the key takeaways that we can go back to our communities and spread the word about Eastern. So I've asked Chris to lead us in that discussion, and I'll turn the floor over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. Yes, this is a little bit related to the advocacy toolkits conversation earlier. It's a different way of thinking about it. One of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from the board's annual evaluation, actually for several years, is a sense of uncertainty, even frustration around what seemed like conflicting asks of the trustees, particularly in orientation and such. We emphasize trustees don't speak for the university or the board, except for the chair, or if specifically appointed to. In that regard, we're trying to cover a concern about, say, personal observations appearing in the media as something other than what they actually are. But I think what trustees get from that is a message of keep your mouth shut. On the other hand, we talk, and AGB talks quite a bit about the need for trustees, the role of trustees as advocates for the university in a number of forums. And so one of the things we're wanting to do is, for this piece, is really, let's talk about what to say when you go home and people say, what's the board doing? What was your last meeting about? And so the idea is, let's just, you can identify some things that you think are common messages to take back from this meeting. It's just an experiment. And if it takes off, we might align these sort of things with what ends up being in the press release from the meeting and other messaging. But we wanted to at least give it a try as a way of responding to that earlier trustee feedback. So thinking over the agenda we've had, what are some takeaways?
So I know we're springing this on you. So to start things off, I'll just read to you something that I wrote down after yesterday, and I've shared with President Ryan, and this is what I wrote. Oregon currently ranks 46th nationwide in the amount of funding it provides per student enrolled in the public university system. Now Oregon's universities are being asked to do more. Not more with more funding, not more with the same funding. We're being asked to do more for less funding. Our state can accomplish this by doing one of 5 things. Number 1, becoming the 47th worst state. Number 2, becoming the 48th worst state. Number 3, becoming the 49th worst state. Number 4, becoming the 50th worst state. Or number 5, by addressing the inadequate funding of our public universities. So I guess for me, that's a key takeaway that I'm whenever anybody asks me about public university funding in this state, that's what I'm going to answer. So with that, why don't we start online? I know we are springing this on you and it's new, but I guess a couple things. Do you have a key takeaway that, and again, this is not a reflection on what what necessarily was a valuable part of the meeting to you. We'll get to that, but I've heard you all wish to have direction and a consistent message. So anyway, that's anybody online have any thoughts that they'd like to share? I see smiles, but no hands going up. We anticipated this. So, Mauricio.
So thank you. It's an easy question, a very complex answer, right? I'm going to shoot from the hip. I like your approach, Chuck. So knowing that the funding from the state of Oregon is at the level it is, already paints a picture of, so what is important to Oregonians? I guess the big question is, what as Oregonians feel, or actually, where do we put our wallet? Which investment we have been making more and more. And I'm thinking about, because in my work, I work a lot with early learning. We have changed our position on early learning funding drastically in the last 10 years. Drastically. We started building centers, investing more, recognizing how important early learning investments are. That did not that did not happen, that those kind of attention was paid. So I guess we are competing statewide with politics, but also with the elevator speech at the as you check out. And I say, if we had to ask for more money, where should that money go first? There is a competition, and the competition is clear that our state, regardless of their political makeup, has decided throughout the year not to invest more in higher education, while they kept on increasing investment in different areas. So is we're looking for, I guess we're looking for more money, but we're also looking for a story to tell of why higher education is still valuable and very important to it. Many of us are sitting here today, all of us are sitting in this room because some way, somehow, we were touched by higher education in different ways. In fact, we don't have anybody. They're serving on boards like this for higher ed that did not have an experience in higher education. Maybe it would be cool to have a different angle to that one day. So my point is to really tell my story about that. I guess that changed my life. I was thinking about what we heard from our students, how inspiring is many of the stories that we hear are. I was such an idiot at that age that I really feel like I cannot compare. I did not change or choose major because of very introspective or very calculated. So anyway, I loved the inspiration that we get from the students, and I love the passion that we have from our staff and our faculty. My story is very simple. Higher ed changed my life. And part of who I am now is because of the experiences that I had in different countries, in different continents as well. So how do we get more money, or how do we tell again that message, Chuck, that the pie can remain the same, but we are advocating for a different distribution of priorities within that pie?
Thanks, Trustee Valerio. Excellent. Very important thoughts. Anyone else? I want you to say something. You're the president.
Yeah, I think one of the other key takeaways that we had from this meeting that I would love you to stomp around with is just, that we're starting that comprehensive campaign, that we're kind of laying the groundswell for that, and we're thinking through that, and we have these priorities, and any feedback you get, send our way. We want to hear about that. So in addition to the funding piece, I would say your comprehensive campaign piece feels really good. And then you have some student stories in your back pocket that can probably help with that message that you heard maybe at Lobby Day. One thing the students didn't talk about, but I got to watch them meet with Mike Freeze, one of our graduates, who is now a lobbyist at the Capitol. And just even that kind of alumni contact they had, I could just see them grow in those moments, thinking about, well, what's my future with this degree? Where is it going to take me? There's just some really incredible stories I think you might have in your pocket as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Anyone else? Sorry? Go ahead.
May I offer one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It seems to me, and this may be a theme of every meeting, but it may be a theme that bears repeating. We heard a lot about the importance of EOU as an access institution. We heard that the people who might be funding this campaign, that's a key thing they see about the university. We heard a presentation from a faculty member about that's not just talk. This is real work that happens in our institution on trying to make this live up to that language. It's even a competitive advantage to us. It's how we, to some degree, brand ourselves. So I just, I'm not a trustee, but I thought I'd offer that.
Well, thanks, Chris. Yeah, excellent. Well, so yeah, think about this. Think about whether you think this is going to be a worthwhile opportunity. We'll do it again. So, be forewarned. But yeah, I think, and Chris, next step wise, could you put together, just a little brief one pager on, and we'll send this out to you so that you'll have these ideas memorialized. So
Absolutely. That's the way it works.
yes, thank you. So lastly, before we end the meeting, you all told me how much you've appreciated the process that George started, of ending the meeting with a reflection of what not that you're taking away, but what during the meeting has influenced you and not's going to change your life, but anyway, what's influenced you. I've enjoyed that also, so much to the point that I've decided to memorialize this process, and I'm going to call it the Mendoza moment. So we will end our meetings with a Mendoza moment, and basically, again, just an opportunity to reflect back on the meeting. I am going to start with Trustee Geegan because she's explained to me that she has to leave for another appointment. So Margot, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being sensitive to my schedule. I'm sure everybody's got to run somewhere, but you don't want me flying around town driving. That's not safe for anyone.
No, we don't.
So thank you very much. I just want to highlight that, there has been a lot that we've all kind of taken in the last couple of days. I was talking with Kelly this morning saying that I couldn't sleep last night. I just kept tossing and turning, and that's just how my mind works. And I just want to highlight that, we were talking about curriculum building yesterday. And unless you've actually built curriculums, you don't really understand what we mean when we say that, it's the Wild West or it's not the Wild West. So I just want to really briefly just let you know what we have to go through when we put a program through here. I've been building programs around the country. I've earned tenure multiple times before I came here, everything from private institutions to public universities. And I got to tell you, this is the most regulated environment I've ever seen. And I worked with the Department of Defense. Working on the peer review there was simple compared to this, right? So this is not the Wild West. That's not to say that the Wild West doesn't exist out there. It does, but it's not here. And I am so confident that the structure we have, that there is not junk coming out of ELU. Why? Because the peer review process is grueling. This is it, just big picture. You come up with an idea, right? And then you say, oh, great, let's try and do it interdisciplinary. So you work with another team, and that takes a while to make sure it fits. And then you got to go make sure that there's a demand for it. So you do an external review, make sure there's a demand, and yay, there's a demand. Okay, now what do? Check with HEC. Make sure that what you're doing is not duplicated anywhere else in the state, public institutions, private institutions, junior colleges, universities, whole 9 yards. And then once you do that, does it still make sense? Is it still feasible with demand? So we did that, satisfied that requirement. Is it still demand focused? Yes. Okay, good. Now what's the next step? We have accreditation at the university level, NWCCU. Make sure that our learning outcomes are in step with that. And then if we have discipline-specific accreditation, which we do, we have to make sure that we comply with that and without violating any of the rules of HEC and NWCCU. And then once we do all that, then we have a strategic plan from the Board of Trustees and the President. We have to make sure that our program supports that. And once we do all of that, then we're ready for peer review. That wasn't peer review, okay? Then peer review starts in the college, and it is grueling. And it should be. The grueling it's more difficult earlier than it is later, right? Because you're doing all these renovations. So you go through this grueling peer review in your college, and then you do whatever they say and say, thank you, may I have another? Thank you, may I have another, right? You incorporate what makes sense. What doesn't make sense, you give an argument, and it's this process. And you incorporate all the renovations, which is a lot. You go from college to EPCC, to faculty senate, to provost, to the president, to the Board of Trustees, to HEC. Does that sound like the Wild West to you? That is highly regulated, highly, right? So we're not throwing anything at the wall and see what sticks. We are threading a needle here is what we're doing, okay? And I love what we're doing. And I'm actually putting together a certificate as we speak. So I know what we have to go through. And I just wanted to let you know that, unless you've built programs, you don't understand what we're talking about. And I just want you to know that we have a structure here to ensure that we're not producing junk. We're not doing that. All right. So, and we have some really smart people here. There's some great innovative ideas. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the stuff that we do because we have to be innovative. The days of the status quo are over. If we want to live, we have to adapt. Adapt or die. That's the way that it is today. And so I'm excited about seeing what certificates come through. And I promise you, they're not junk. They've been reviewed upside down, backside. Oh. So anyways, I just want to let you guys know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting. Trustee Thompson.
I think it's been a great board meeting. Some of the camaraderie and different things like dinner last night, really nice. Get to know each other a little bit better. Really appreciated that. Looking back at the agenda, one of the things that made me reflect a little bit of something we didn't actually talk about because Genesis wasn't here was recruiting. As board members, and it's something that I do in my job, daily, but it's like when I'm in my community, what do I do? And the low hanging fruit, the baristas in the coffee shop, they're easy to talk to about EOU, but it's we all know people that are centers of influence, and can touch other people, and how as board members can we connect with them, talk to them about what EOU has to offer. But me working here, I have knowledge that some of you guys probably don't about our different programs and things like that. It's just how as a board member, if you find somebody that's interested or a center of influence, how do you get somebody to come speak to them, so they can have more knowledge about EOU, or, whose information can you give them to contact if they're interested in EOU? And that's, it's what I do in my day-to-day stuff. But, for me, I think, in my own community, how can I be more intentional, when I'm, just at home, going to the grocery store, it's small town, see the same young people that work in there every day, and just, start having conversations, and what are your plans? Are you going to school? Have you thought about it? And things like that. And, it's not just for the board members. It'd be great if, everybody that works at EOU could do the same thing, and just, that's all I could. Thank you.
Thank you. I was thinking about Genesis's presentation, and it's so important. I'll talk to the president if there's any way we can figure out how to get that to you sooner than May. We'll figure out a way. So, thank you, Trustee Mendoza.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking maybe the cascading conversations and reflection can just be one or two, one and the same. You can say cascading conversations or reflections. I think for me, almost everything is about situational awareness. And I felt like it was a good agenda. So I felt like we had a lot of topics that we needed to better understand. And again, I'd say situational awareness to me is really where we make the best decisions. I like the updates that we've received from Tim. Offense and defense is always important to me. Having an answer for almost anything that's thrown at you. And I really always appreciate the level of knowledge and understanding that Tim has, so that we can be prepared for the future too. So that kind of stuff. The proposal for the reductions for academic student affairs or finance and administration and even governance, all those things to make us function better, to streamline so that we can have meetings. All those things that have to be done sometimes to make the work impactful. Those are all, whether that's cascading or whether that's reflection. We weren't experiencing the level of success that we needed to. So we had to, or you have to tinker with it to try to make it better. And that's part of work. If things are going this way, you got to make adjustments to get back on track. And that kind of stuff for me is really important. When you have problems, you got to find solutions. So it's the heck stuff that was shared for how they're going about business, how they're going about. I know that we want to make efficiencies, or I know we need to potentially downsize, but also I'll just say change. That kind of stuff for me needs to have a lot of sensitivity, a lot of knowledge, a lot of awareness. And I don't think we need to be Eastern because they're not Eastern, and we need to advocate for Eastern. All the things that you're doing. I love the kids talking about their advocacy for Lobby Day. The Cascade stuff or the reflection for me is just the impact that they make and the live life experience that they have, and then what they try to do to make the life better for a student here is always good. The digital accessibility part caught my attention in the way that whatever the output that people have to do or implement, the more we can support, or the more they have strategies or tactics or machines that can almost do it for them, if there was such a thing, because it's a lot. I usually think of if we were in their shoes, how hard or how difficult. And if it's easy, that's great. But if it's hard, how much can we support them? Everything else, love the foundation. I definitely agree with everything that's taking place. We needed to have, and we should have their involvement. Also, the James presenting basically syllabus and all of that. I thought, and I also felt like you did a wonderful job trying to take care of everybody, trying to move us forward. It's hard to plan an agenda and to make it something that is meaningful for everyone. But the bigger goal, is always just meeting the needs of most and moving everything forward as best you can. And that's really, and if you can do it kindly and and supportive, that's icing on the cake.
Well, thank you. I had a good role model. Tamara, Trustee Babbitt, you are first on my list on the screen. I know you weren't able to join us yesterday, but do you have any thoughts on at least today's meeting?
Thank you. Sorry I missed everybody yesterday. My day job, I work for another board, so I couldn't miss that. And unfortunately, I think I have one more of those this academic year. I don't have anything to add, and please, Chair, know that if we're being quiet, we're still paying attention, and sometimes being quiet and listening is just okay. So thank you very much. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Trustee Valerio, you are next on my screen.
Thank you. I'll start by saying that I am always and continue to be impressed by our president. It's amazing how much the ability that she has to follow and to communicate. That's really inspiring to me. Several things, I have several notes. The complexity of how the funds are allocated, the student success is mind-boggling. So I need to learn more, because that's one of our measuring sticks. And if we need to be good advocate, I need to learn a little bit more about that. And I'm going to stop right there. I know we're short for time, but it's always invigorating. I would like to have also, when we're talking about the last point on the agenda today was really about talking points. I don't know if I have the talking point to answer about the challenges of higher education. So if we collectively at one point, we really can do a one-pager of talking points and say, why should I say, I'm going to start with the easy one. Why should I send the kids to college today if they can make more money immediately? Those are kind of talking points that inherently we kind of feel them, we know. But if we can learn from each other a little bit better, they will be useful to me. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks very much. And again, we'll when Genesis can, we will get that information to you, and that will be a living document, obviously, that will continually evolve. Trustee Lair, you are next on my list.
Yeah, good meeting. I was struck that this meeting, I think, is a lot more operational and systems in nature, but I appreciate that too. People have spoken to the complexity of our legislative context as well as our funding context. And I think that's important. I've been using a metaphor in K-12 that I think is apt here as well, is like, does it really matter which direction the Titanic was pointing when it sunk? So that being said, is like, it really speaks to the critical features of the systems before we can really dig in and be really intentional about innovation, even student outcomes and success, necessarily have to, run parallel to these conversations about how do we keep the ship afloat? Like, how do we make sure that we have something that like framework to offer the student programs within? And so I think just kudos, and I'm really struck by how impressively EOU is able to continue working on the student aspects while we're, there's sirens blaring all around our heads right now saying that there's a lot of major systemic and operational challenges to confront. But to do those things simultaneously in the way that EOU is doing it is just really laudable. I think that that's an impressive feat. And it's something that in my own advocacy and support of EOU, I often tell folks that, managing for the operational house while also centering and focusing on student outcomes is a tricky dynamic to hold. And I think that Dr. Ryan, you and your team do an exceptional job at that balance.
Thank you, Trustee Lair. Birthday girl, Trustee Cronin. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm going to make it pretty short. I just want to, my takeaway and what I'm thinking out for is how important EOU is, our mission, our values. We need as trustees, as an institution, to be resolute in our continued support for our students amidst all of you have so eloquently expressed the challenges that are ahead for us. We know them well. We have excellent leadership in place. We could not have a better leader than we do in President Ryan and the full team that she's assembled. But I'm encouraging myself and all of us to stand strong and remember at all times that the very EOU ministers and works for the students that we serve, they need us. They need us to be a healthy institution. And so that's where my focus is going to be. And I feel like that's where everybody's is. So thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne, have I missed anybody in the line? Anna and Scott are not there.
So Anna sent me a message. She had at 11:30 that she had to go to.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Peck?
Yeah, I thought learning the current state of legislation was invaluable in being prepared as a university, especially with the uncertainty that HEC holds at a state level at this point. I like the shared governance presentation. It's important to understand how each piece fits into the puzzle. And I would just like to reiterate a point that Cedric mentioned yesterday and mention the fact that almost every legislature mentioned how they knew Kelly Ryan. And to me, this highlights the great impact she has and the passion she has for the university.
Thank you. Trustee Rio.
I'll also keep it short. I think everyone kind of covered any of the points that I would have made, but I just appreciate everyone's dedication and continuing the conversations. And yeah, I think it was an impactful meeting. We fit a lot in 2 days, so appreciate everyone's work on that. But yeah, no more feedback from me on that.
Thanks, Cedric. Trustee Smith?
Yes, thank you. Then there's been a lot of articulate comments, and I think I agree with them all. I just want to say I am excited about the the campaign, the 100-year campaign. And when Tyler and I were talking last night, he had talked about how Harney County really is a supporter of EOU. And so I'm looking forward to talking to you more, Tyler, and how I can be part of that. But yeah, and then just kind of one more thing about HEC, kind of what the heck about HEC. But I I think maybe to the point that Chris made is, you know, these challenges can be opportunities. And I just want to really focus on that piece of it. So thanks.
Thank you. President Ryan.
I'll share. I had a moment yesterday and was on the struggle bus, and I called Chris Cronin to get that deep well of wisdom that she is kind of so good at, and really kind of set me straight, helping me be more positive in challenging times. And I will share, you know, the support that each of you provides me is incredibly meaningful. It really does impact how I move through the world. So thank you so much. And I think, you know, Aaron's comments are I'm very in line with too. This felt like a meeting where we really kind of were working on getting our ducks in a row. And then to George's point, getting that context that's incredibly important. So thank you.
Thank you. My only comment is my goal, as long as I have this tenure, is to make these meetings that you want to come to, that are valuable investments in your time, and I want you to have fun. So anyway, that's what I'll be trying to do. And if there are no other comments, then we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.